You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks, what is happening? Happy Friday, everybody. TGIF, all those good things. Man, we got Christmas, next week? It's going to be a busy new year. I want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. We'll go up here. GS70 Stealth, Fran Pander. I suspected you were a fed from about the second time I watch you. Now you just went in head first. Well, thanks for the benefit of the doubt, friend. So you can just continue on your merry way thinking whatever you want. The real feds are out there pushing this nonsense. Can't wait for another great stream. P-Dubs, Con, want to say hi to Con. We got several of our great old Ghost Guardian. We got several of our great moderators. Speaking of which, I'm hoping I don't have brownie in my teeth because somebody, most likely in this chat, maybe not. I haven't seen this person yet. Send me some beautiful brownies for Christmas, so thank you very much. And they are delicious. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy things she said on Pierce. We're going to go through that tonight, but we're definitely going to go through. There's a lot of stuff I want to cover. So we're going to go through her latest episode, which was weird because she didn't post that till 6 something. I think she is way behind the curve from yesterday's episode. I mean, the groundbreaking information we got out of that. We have this military operation that's being planned, clandestine assassination operation being planned at Joint Task Force Southern Border, where they're going to assassinate an American citizen on U.S. soil, no less. Now, you got to understand how ridiculous this is for lots of different reasons. First of all, at a Joint Task Force, you're going to have a bunch of regular Army folks. It's not just special operations. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if they have a special operations contingent down there. So you're talking about 3/4 of the personnel there don't even have a security clearance. And then the fact that they would use the military for something like that is just bonkers. I'm sorry, you don't know what you're talking about. You're ignorant about these facts, and you just don't know how these things work. And I get it. Look, and that's what Candace preys upon. And then, of course, we had the revelation that Brian Harpole was there, which we know he wasn't because I got his entire itinerary for that day. And then on top of that, the real groundbreaking, the earth-shattering reveal yesterday was that Erica Kirk herself was there. And, I was talking to somebody earlier about that. That was so funny because he's going on and on about this blonde that he sees that, you can tell when somebody's really well-to-do, but they're dressing down. And I was like, where is this guy going? She's blonde. She's got a ponytail. She's got these blue eyes. I'm like, okay, you got these blue eyes. Caught me completely off guard when he drops the bomb. Oh, it was Erica Kirk. 95 to 100% sure that was Erica Kirk. And folks, we're going to be getting some DD-214s from certain people. And if you haven't been following me on X, we're going to find everything out that we need to know about Mitchell Snell. So there's a lot more stuff coming with that. Yeah, so we got a busy day. The other thing that we're going to do after we go through her latest episode is we're going to hit a couple things. Number one, I do want to kind of go through some of the Pierce Morgan stuff. I know a lot of people want to talk about that. And then I do want to show you Ben Shapiro's message at AmFest. And then I also want you to hear Tucker Carlson's response to it, because I think both of those are pretty good. All right. So without further ado, what we're going to go ahead and we're going to drop in Candace over here. So let's share this screen. We can already tell by the title that this is not going to be, it's not going to be very kind to Ben Shapiro. So let's jump in here. I'm going to start playing that. And we will add this to the stage. And we will get rid of her chat. Nobody needs to see that. Boom.
obvious that in fact, it almost seems like he's demanding that nobody.
All right. Real quick, before we start this fully, folks, I'm going to lay out the normal rules. We encourage disagreement on here if you want to talk about something. The other thing I want to try to do is talk a little bit. There's all these lingering misconceptions. I'm still hearing stuff like, hey, that was a stock photo for the weapon. Little things like that just keep constantly coming up, no matter how much I cover them. Obviously, we're not gonna overcome the 7.5 million subscriber messaging that Candace Owens has, but we're gonna do our best to address all those. The drone lie, right? That it was a lie that they definitely had drones up there because Frank Turek said they did. Yeah, he said they did, but he mistook some things. So some little things like that I think are worth cleaning up and just making sure that people have the full truth. And then at the end of the day, look, if I give you all this information and you still feel like there's some sort of conspiracy or some other thing like that, look, we can talk about that too. We can talk about the probabilities of those things. I'm all about some conspiracies, folks. I think there's potentially more conspiracy behind what we are seeing with Charlie Kirk. I think it's very relatable to or similar to the Thomas Crooks and the J-13 assassination attempt on President Trump. I'm open to all that. But what I'm not open to is BS. And what we've been getting is intentional lies, deception from Candace, and it has to stop. And on top of that, she's destroying a lot of people's lives. She doesn't care about whatever dispersions that she casts upon anyone without any sort of proof. But anyways, so no name calling. If you do that, you're gone. We don't need you in the chat. We will, I don't know, we'll make room for somebody else. But let's go ahead and play this and let's hear what she has to say today.
Inquire further about Erica Kirk. It's odd because Ben had no allegiance to Charlie Kirk when he was alive. So what is it about Charlie's widow in particular that is inspiring his very public nervous breakdown? Personally, I think he knows something about her. That is what I am sensing, that he knows something about Erica Kirk. And every time he speaks, I grow more certain that Israel might be involved with 9/10. So let's keep investigating. Welcome back to Candace.
All right.
First and foremost, Ben Shapiro just keeps calling my name out on stage. He's calling for.
One of the things I've seen, and I'm sure you guys will agree, you can't win with Candace. No matter what you do with Candace, she is going to attribute it to her or some attack on her, or basically what I'm saying here is Ben Shapiro, if he wasn't saying anything about any of this, she'd be talking about him right now saying, you know what? He hasn't said anything about what's going on, this investigation that I'm doing. His silence is golden. It tells me everything that I need to know. Or you have Ben Shapiro that, like me, has had enough of this nonsense. And he's had enough of the conservative party either remaining silent on what she's doing and the fact that they're allowing her to attack Erica Kirk and TPUSA the way that he did, the way that she is. And we're going to show you his extremely powerful speech on that. So I don't care what you think about Ben Shapiro one way or the other. I think his speech was absolutely true, and we'll show that in just a few minutes. She may even show it in her stream. I don't know.
For me, he's calling for me, and I'd like to show up for him today. Okay, last night he hit the stage at Turning Point USA's AmFest the other night. And I'd like, first and foremost, just to let you all know, some people noticed that he wasn't on the AmFest list for years, and all of a sudden he's back on the speaker list beginning in 2024. I want to let you know how that actually happened. So the story goes, obviously, that in 2024, Ben fired me in March. Well, we would say management fired me. But firing me wasn't enough. He wanted to make sure my reputation and livelihood was also destroyed. Of course, what happened thereafter is Charlie Kirk instantly came out and supported me because we were like brother and sister, always supporting each other publicly. And then I showed you guys a few episodes ago that we found out as I was going to speak in Dallas at their YWLS convention that Ben had sent an intern who was going to ask me a question while I was in stage, but we sort of rumbled this plan. And I called Ben out on stage. Ben did not like that I called him out on stage. So he began working behind the scenes to have Jewish donors start threatening Charlie to make sure that I wasn't invited to speak at year end because I was an anti-Semite. This is what Charlie told me. And instead, he wanted to.
No, obviously, Candy's meeting with Erica didn't accomplish anything. I agree. As a matter of fact, I think that it was a miscalculation on TPUSA's part and Erica's part when it comes down to this. I think that Candace completely thinks she won with that meeting. They went out of their way, and I just think that Erica was being gracious as possible. They flew to Tennessee to accommodate her, and the next episode that we covered here, I mean, it was nuts. She won. That's what she felt like. She felt like these people had acquiesced to her, that she won. There was no grace given to TPUSA whatsoever. There was still all these little subtle innuendos and digs at them. And it was just disgusting. She had an opportunity. She blew it. And I hope that Erica and TPUSA see that for what it is. And, they gave her an opportunity. And I hope that they come back at her with some legal action, because that's what she needs.
Be invited. So he's just going to purchase a friendship, right? So he comes at Turning Point USA, and this is what was divulged to me from Andrew Colvett at the time, willing
I've never
to
been paid
spend
by
an
TPUSA.
offensive
I
amount
do
of
what I
money
do because
to
I
be a part
think
of
it's important to do
AmFest.
it.
Like I said, that was told to me by Andrew Colvett directly, because he wanted to say, look, like, obviously, we are totally, Charlie's 100% on your side. This is like an offensive ad spend. I was like, take his money. I could care less, obviously. And I knew that he was working with Barry Weiss to call and put an article out saying that the donors, the people on the board of TPUSA want Candace gone. All of this petty behind the scenes behavior, because I called him out on stage. Okay. So quite literally, this is the definition of buying friends and influence and fame. Now, in case you're listening and thinking, is Ben Shapiro actually capable of that level of pettiness? I'm going to tell you a story about Thomas Sowell. Yes, Dr. Thomas Sowell of Stanford. The story begins in 2023, shortly after October 7th. Ben was sort of having another one of his open nervous breakdowns, and his audience just went kaput. People just stopped watching his podcast because he was screaming at Americans that we needed to prioritize Israel, and people just didn't feel that way. Okay, it's not our country. I'm sorry that happened to you, but why do Americans need to be screamed at about what's happening in the Middle East? Anyways, throughout this time, Brian Mast was wearing an ID.
All right. This is the last time I'm going to warn you people. All right. I'm just not going to sit here and listen to this shit. I have not been paid by TPUSA, by the Jews, or anybody else. All right. And because I sit here and show you guys evidence, because your small little brains can't handle the fact that you're wrong and you've been tricked and duped by this woman, because you have. You can't handle it. So the only option that you have, you can't argue any points. You have nothing to say. So you go with, oh, you've been paid by the Jews. Oh, you've been paid by TPUSA. I've never met with TPUSA. I don't get a penny from any Jews. I don't get any money from anybody other than the money, the revenue that I create with this channel. All right. And that's strictly from the only money I ever make is off of YouTube. All right. And it's not enough money to fund my lifestyle. All right. I have a business. I do that. That's what I do full time. And when I take time out of that business to do this, and I do this because I think this woman is a genuine threat to the United States in many different arenas. All right. What she's doing is evil. It's contrived. It's wrong. And I think it's a genuine psyop to trick Americans, to undermine everything that Charlie did. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to call her out. And if you don't like it, you can move on and you can talk about the Jews and all the things that you like. You're just troglodytes, and you need to pull your heads out of your butt and start using some common sense and start thinking critically, because you're being tricked. You're redeemable. All right. You have an opportunity to realize that you've been tricked with all of this craziness. But if I'm just telling you guys, the next time I see a comment like that, you're banned. That's just how it's going to work.
Uniform in Congress, and he basically said that there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian life. And when I saw this, as shared by Yashar Ali on X, I responded and I said that genocidal language, no matter who shares it, is always wrong. Genocide is always wrong, is what I tweeted. And this caused an emotional breakdown amongst people who support Israel. I didn't think that was a controversial statement. I thought that was sort of what we all believed in. Genocide is always wrong.
I agree.
Anyways, for Ben, he then had some private event, probably at another Jewish donor's house, and somebody caught him standing on a table insulting me over my genocide is always wrong tweet. Take a listen to what Ben had to say.
The question was about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful. Without a doubt, I think it's been absolutely I can't close that. Yeah, I mean, she still works for my company. I think she's been absolutely disgraceful. I think that her faux sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's saying, and I find them disreputable.
Disreputable, disgraceful. She works at my company. You can imagine that the internet went crazy because they wanted me to respond to him. I can't believe this. They work together, they're colleagues. Somehow this gets leaked. And I want to mention, because it's very relevant, that was on the morning of November 14th. I was 6 days away from giving birth. I was very heavily pregnant. Anyways, I wake up to this, and shockingly, nobody from the Daily Wire steps in to manage the situation. And as you can imagine, virtually every...
This is absolutely true. Again, I'm subscribed and didn't get a notification to this live stream, but the Candace cult sure knew to show up and defend their dear leader. Pretty interesting, weird, and suspicious. All joking aside, look, I'm constantly getting trolled on X, and you go through every single one of these in their sub 100 followers, like 50 to 60% of them, those accounts started in September. So I think that's why, at least on X, I have a different theory of algorithmic pushes that are happening on YouTube. But on X, the reason that that entire crew, and it's not just Candace, it's Ian Carroll, it's Meg, the village crazy lady, it's Ryan Mata. There's a whole bunch of them, right? And they're all, this is the head of the snake right here. There are bots pushing them people. And there are bots that are attacking people that are standing up against her and her narratives, multiple narratives. So there's something going on there. It's not organic. It's artificial. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's foreign adversaries. I don't know if it's political adversaries. I don't know if it's deep state. I think it could be all the above, but there's something happening. This is a genuine, folks, I'm telling you, this is a case study for a real psyop to see how dumb the American people are and to see how little it takes to trick them. And clearly it's much more effective than I ever thought it would be.
Journalist, every person with a media platform was contacting me to comment, to respond to me being insulted by someone. I'm about to give birth, I'm being insulted, and they're not getting anything from the Daily Wire. So I am obviously frustrated. You should also tell you, I had no PR at this time. My PR was the internal PR at the Daily Wire.
Yep, you can turn her up.
And it was very clear.
Oops.
Focus was on protecting Ben, even though he was the one who insulted me publicly, because I said that genocide is always wrong. That is the genesis of that statement. That's all I said.
Gotcha.
Obviously, I wanted to respond angrily to the press. I wanted to hit back at Ben. And I guess you could sort of say my perspective was an eye for an eye, but my husband, who was a better person than me, instructed me that morning to instead take a deep breath, relax, okay? Don't think about what you're feeling in the moment. Think about how you're going to feel in the future. And he instructed me to instead read the Bible, the Sermon on the Mount. And I read through it, and he reminds me that everybody who wants to comment, they don't care about me either, right? They're selling headlines, they want the clicks, they want the drama, and I'm going to feed into that. For what reason? For what reason, actually, am I going to give a comment and say something about Ben Shapiro? Blessed are the peacemakers, right? Don't buy into this click culture. And so I tweeted that actually my husband was right. I called for peace. I tweeted, blessed are the peacemakers. And I made the mistake, I guess it was a mistake, that after I tweeted, blessed are the peacemakers, and I'm thinking that I'm going to be commended when I get back to work. Like, wow, you really took the high road. I ended this biblical passage with Christ is king. Christ is the king. He's the only thing that matters. Obviously, Christ is king. Now, it was just Tucker Carlson's luck that I had been slated to come on his news show the very next day. He had booked me 6 weeks earlier. I got approval from Daily Wire. He booked me for November 15th. So suddenly Ben gets on this table. He insults me. It's trending all over Twitter. And Tucker Carlson is going to be the first person to capture my reaction to it. And when it came time, I kept up with the peacemaker. I made the decision to just take the high road. I said, I don't want that to negatively impact how people perceive the Daily Wire. There are great people there. I mean, I wouldn't be proud on that, but I'm not taking the bait here. I didn't say anything snipey back at Ben because I didn't want to feed the mob. That was my honest perspective. My husband was just right. And also, we're talking about a work colleague, right? Somehow, me taking the high road made him angrier. So here's what he did. Elsewhere in my interview with Tucker, he asks me who I look up to, who I like. And I told Tucker the truth that it was my dream to meet Thomas Sowell. That when I first got into politics, I read a ton of Thomas Sowell books, and I had tried many times to meet him. And obviously he's.
All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to switch over and we're going to actually play Ben Shapiro's speech from AmFest, TPUSA. So let's play this. I think this could be a lot more interesting. And then I will also play, because he definitely calls out Tucker Carlson all throughout this. And then Tucker does have an interesting response, and we'll play that as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's obviously a massive honor to be here at Turning Point USA. It's even more of an honor to follow Erica Kirk, a heroic figure and a true American patriot. I really believe that the best way to judge a goodness of a man is to see the goodness of his wife and his children. And on that measure, Charlie was unsurpassed.
All right, real quick. So I want to hit these. We got a couple of super chats. I want to hit those real quick. And then I'll comment every now and then, but I want to kind of play this all the way through for the most part. Keep up the good work, Gary. You're even handed, and her lemons can't stand that. It's amazing how this evil woman wraps herself in churchianity. I like that. I'm going to steal that. You're getting flack because you're over the target. They're desperate. That's what she always says, right? Gary, do you and the boys from First Group get together and debunk this guy? Candace says the truth teller, the people want to know, Tim Kennedy style. That is in the works, sir. We are, that will be coming soon. Don't you worry about that. We are all over it. I've been working all day. I've been on the phone with a bunch of different people, a bunch of different entities. That's coming. And then GS70 Stealth, thank you very much. All right.
Erica and her children are in all of our hearts. And of course, this is an incredibly bittersweet moment. It's absolutely bitter because of the murder of our friend Charlie Kirk, an irreplaceable human being. I knew Charlie from the time he was 18 years old, and I watched him build himself into one of the most powerful exponents of conservatism in America, one of the most powerful coalition builders in American history. But it's also sweet to see the number of people who continue to remember Charlie each and every day and to carry on his mission. Well, today, I want to talk about the future of the country. And the future of this country, this amazing country, relies on the future of the conservative movement. It relies on what TPUSA defines as its core mission: freedom, free markets, and limited government. And most of all, the future of this country relies on truth. This country relies on truth because victory, true, real, lasting victory, cannot be achieved without truth. Victory without truth is victory for a lie, and that is no victory at all. And unity without truth is no unity. It is merely solidarity in falsehood. You see, we live in a chaotic time, in a time when lots of people are asking lots of legitimate questions about the conservative movement. What ought we to think about the relationship between free markets and traditional virtue? How should we craft a pragmatic foreign policy that spreads our interests and upholds our ideals? What governmental means are appropriate to achieve political ends? All of these questions aren't new, of course. They've been asked for as long as human beings have been talking about politics, thousands of years. And over the course of this conference, you'll hear a lot of opinions on a lot of these questions. I have my own perspectives on them, of course. You can hear them every single day on my show. My fundamental values have been the same for 25 years. Peace through strength on foreign policy. Traditional values on social policy. Free markets with regard to economics. But today, I want to talk about something even more important. How to discern those attempting to speak truth from frauds and grifters. Because something is new. An informational environment rife with both opportunity and chaos. Opportunity because the legacy media gatekeepers are no longer in charge of what we see and what we hear. And chaos because an anarchic informational environment means we actually have to be smart in how we assess the information and arguments that we hear. Why does that matter? Well, because today the conservative movement is in serious danger. It is in danger, not just from a left that all too frequently excuses everything up to and including murder. The conservative movement is also in danger from charlatans who claim to speak in the name of principle, but actually traffic in conspiracism and dishonesty, who offer nothing but bile and despair, who seek to undermine fundamental principles of conservatism by championing enervation and grievance. These people are frauds, and they are grifters, and they do not deserve your time. And they are something worse than that, a danger to the only movement capable of stopping the left from wrecking the country wholesale. So today, I want to discuss 5 obligations that people who speak to you on matters of importance have to you. I want to speak to you about our duties. Our first duty is truth. We owe you the truth. That means we should not mislead you. It means we shouldn't hide the ball. We shouldn't be deliberately obscure about what we're telling you. We have an obligation to clarity and to honesty. This means that we actually have to be clear in the language that we use. We should not traffic in generality. We should not say things like, they shot Charlie, without specifying whom we mean by they. The person who allegedly shot Charlie Kirk, and whom all the evidence points at, all of it, is a gay, trans-loving furry.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Every bit of evidence points to that. And not only do you not have evidence for all the other nonsense that's being pushed, there's so much evidence against it. So that's what we need to stay focused on, is the fact that we have an evil left that tried to kill Donald Trump and then ultimately did kill Charlie Kirk.
If we are going to target ideological movements, we should talk about the fact that the radical trans movement treats all those who oppose it as existential threats. Or if we're going to talk about the Democratic Party making room for the radical trans movement and echoing its inflammatory rhetoric, well, we should talk about that. Those are specific problems, and they require specific responses. When people say they shot Charlie, however, they are instead trafficking in vagary that results in increased hatred without proposing any effective response. They are fostering despair and rage, and that makes things worse. We must also be honest about what people say and do, regardless of what that means coalitionally. It is the job of politicians to build coalitions. It's the job of those of us who try to shape public opinion to hold politicians to account and to hold them accountable to our values. We must not let fear of audience deter us from telling the truth. We must not let fear of other hosts deter us from telling the truth. So, for example, if Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk if Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk casting aspersions at TPUSA and the people who work here, who worked with Charlie every single day, his best friends, to cast aspersions at Mikey McCoy and Andrew Colvin and Blake Neff and Tyler Boyer, and yes, at Erica Kirk, and to imply or outright claim complicity in a cover-up over Charlie's murder, to spew absolutely baseless trash implicating everyone from French intelligence to Mossad to members of TPUSA in Charlie's murder or a cover-up in that murder, then we, as people with a microphone, have a moral obligation to call that out by name. Erica Kirk and TPUSA never should have been put in the position to have to defend themselves against such specious and evil attacks, particularly in a time of mourning. And the people who refuse to condemn Candace's truly vicious attacks, and some of them are speaking here, are guilty of cowardice. Yes, cowardice. The fact that they have said nothing while Candace has been vomiting all sorts of hideous and conspiratorial nonsense into the public square for years is just as cowardly. Second, because we owe you the truth, we owe you the duty to speak out of principle, not personal feeling. It should not matter whether we despise someone or whether we love someone. The question is what they say and what they do, and whether those things are morally decent or not. On a political level, do they foster freedom, justice, and prosperity? On a personal level, do they treat others as they would wish to be treated? Personal feeling is not a substitute for moral judgment. To take again the Candace Owens situation as an example, friendship with public figures who say or do evil things is not an excuse for silence on the matter. Politics is not the sisterhood of the traveling pants. Politics is about principle, and if you are willing to sacrifice basic truth and simple principle in favor of emotional solidarity, you have betrayed your fundamental duty to the American people. First off, I should break the omerta here and just be a little bit clear. The notion that people in our industry are close friends, like we all take holiday breaks with each other and go to each other's kids' graduations and stuff, is generally untrue. Some people do that, most of us don't. We see each other at conferences and we talk on the phone and all the rest. We're business colleagues. But even if it were true that other public figures were our best friends, our very best friends, that does not relieve us of our duty to speak out of principle and not to cover up evil or shy away from addressing it out of friendship. So no, Tucker Carlson, it is not an excuse to go silent on Candace's targeting of TPUSA. Or to mirror her bullshit lines of questioning because you love Candace personally. The same holds true of Megyn Kelly, a person I consider a friend, characterizing Candace as a young mother and thus shying away from condemning her actions or fibbing about them. That is a non-starter. Meghan Markle is a young mother. Ilhan Omar is a young mother. That doesn't matter. And when Megyn said this week, quote, "My goal and my job here is to try to understand, yes, where Candace is coming from on this," and says she sees no purpose in inserting herself, quote, into this on one side, that is a moral and logical absurdity. There is only one moral side here, Erica Kirk's side. You know, the side of the widow with 2 children, whose husband was shot live on camera in front of all of us. Friendship with the person accusing TPUSA of a cover-up of Charlie's murder is no excuse for cowardice. Third, and relatedly, we have a duty to take responsibility for what we say and do. If we hire awful people, we're responsible for that. I have some experience there, as you might suspect. That means that if we offer a guest for your viewing, we owe it to you to ask the kinds of questions that actually get at the truth. If we agree with the guest, that's fine, but we should own it. So, for example, if you host a Hitler apologist, Nazi-loving, anti-American piece of refuse like Nick Fuentes, you know, the Nick Fuentes who said that the Vice President of the United States is a, quote, fat gay race traitor married to a Jeet. The person who said that Charlie Kirk was a, quote, retarded idiot. The person who said, and pardon my language here, it's his quote, that he, quote, took Turning Point USA and fucked it, and that's why it's filled with groypers. If you have that person on your show and you proceed to glaze him, you ought to own it. There is a reason that Charlie Kirk despised Nick Fuentes, and indeed even chided Dinesh D'Souza for debating him. He knew that Nick Fuentes is an evil troll, and that building him up is an act of moral imbecility. And that is precisely what Tucker Carlson did. He built Nick Fuentes up, and he ought to take responsibility for that, just as he ought to take responsibility for glazing pornographer and alleged sex trafficker Andrew Tate, or for mainstreaming fake historian and pseudo-Nazi apologist Daryl Cooper as America's best and most honest popular historian. Hosts are indeed responsible for the guests they choose and the questions they ask those guests. Fourth, because we have a duty to truth, we also have a duty to provide you with evidence of the claims that we make. Emotive accusations, conspiracy theories, and just asking questions, that's lazy and stupid and misleading. None of them are a substitute for truth. None of them are a substitute for evidence. So when Candace Owens says, I don't know, but I know, that is retarded. And we are all more retarded for having heard it. When Steve Bannon, for example, accuses his foreign policy opponents of loyalty to a foreign country, he's not actually making an argument based in evidence. He's simply maligning people that he disagrees with, which is indeed par for the course from a man who was once a PR flack for Jeffrey Epstein. Check the record. Our duty to provide you evidence means we actually have to do much more than just ask questions. Just asking questions is something my 5-year-old does, and it's really cute when it comes from my 5-year-old. But when grown men and women spend their days just asking questions without, seeking answers.
Couldn't agree with this more. Just asking questions. First of all, you're not. You're a liar. You're insulting our intelligence. We know what you've been doing the entire time, Candace, et al. It's not just asking questions, and you sound stupid. And then on top of that, you just go and you just throw shit everywhere at the walls, at everybody, and just see what sticks. That's not a mature way to go about. It's not a logical way to go about an investigation. There's obvious signs that this was never an investigation. And, Ben is pointing out some very clear things that should be clues to people. I don't care if you like Ben. I don't care if you're into hating Israel or whatever else. I honestly don't care. I couldn't care less. I think those are all valid points about talking about whether or not we should be sending money to Israel and other foreign countries. Israel's far from the biggest problem. But what I don't want to disagree with, or I don't disagree with, is everything that he's saying in this speech.
They are lying to you. In fact, they're doing something even worse. They are seeding distrust in the world around you, and they are enervating you in the process. So, for example, if many speakers, including Tucker Carlson and others, get on stage here at TPUSA and claim, without proper evidence, that Jeffrey Epstein was running a Mossad rape ring being covered up by the Trump administration, they are not actually uncovering a conspiracy or effectuating a solution. They are claiming a special provenance to information they won't let you see, which builds their power and leaves you with none. They are also implicating in their speculation actual human beings, good human beings, like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi, and yes, the President of the United States, even if they're too cowardly to say President Trump's name. And that means you won't trust those good people in the future. You haven't gotten smarter, you've just been manipulated. When forced to demonstrate their evidence, these same people will often refuse to provide it. They'll claim ignorance. They'll pretend they're outside the system, and they don't have access to actual information. They're just asking questions. But many of these same people have direct pipelines to informational sources. So, for example, if Tucker wants answers to his questions about, say, Jeffrey Epstein, he could call the Vice President of the United States. He's quite close with him. But he won't, because that might undermine the empty speculation. None of this means there aren't actual real conspiracies in the world. Of course there are. But actual conspiracies require actual evidence. Yes, there was a Russiagate conspiracy, and we know the names of the people involved and what they did. We know Hillary Clinton and Fusion GPS and James Comey and Loretta Lynch and Adam Schiff. We know all of those people. Yes, there was a COVID-19 conspiracy. We know that Anthony Fauci worked to shut down alternative solutions from people like Jay Bhattacharya. But when people posit a conspiracy and then provide you no evidence, they are doing you a fundamental disservice, and they are making you.
This has been one of my complaints throughout this. You don't get to just come out and say, oh, well, this is all bullshit, right? You got to give us an alternative. I mean, you can't go 9 months and then 9 months. You can't go 90 days, 3 months with Candace just saying, nope, this isn't true. Nope, this isn't true. Okay, fine. You've told us what's not true. Now tell us what is true. Tell us how this entire conspiracy and everything else actually took place. Like, where was the shooter if it wasn't Tyler Robinson? If it wasn't Tyler Robinson, who was it? Like, tell us how this plays out. But instead, all we get is new characters added to the storyline every freaking week. Now it's the U.S. military planning operations in Fort Huachuca. 1 minute it's the Egyptian planes. The next minute it's the French Foreign Legion. It's Israel. It's people in maroon shirts. This is dumb. Like, he said something earlier. You know what? They're not giving you, you're not getting smarter. You're just getting more and more confused, and you've been manipulated. And that's exactly what has happened. And that's all I hear from Candace's side. Nope. Like, nope, that's just the Fed narrative. Nope, that's it. Like, you don't give me any other narrative to believe, because that's not what the goal is. The goal is to undermine everything that Charlie Kirk did. The goal is to seed confusion, to spread chaos, to destroy the conservative movement. That's what the goal is. The goal has never been for anybody involved on that side of the discussion is to actually find what happened, find out what happened, right? This is not an investigation. This is a smear campaign. It's politically motivated. It's anti-American at its core. That's really what it is too. And then on top of that, the other thing that it's doing, folks, I'm telling you, Candace is being used, because what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, all right? Everyone is going to freaking bounce out on her, including all the support, all the numbers. Everything is going to fall, and she's going to be left as an empty husk. And the people that have used her and pushed her for their own means don't care. They don't care. And when it's all said and done, Candace is going to have zero credibility. She's going to have zero future in politics. And that's a real shame, because she was at one time was a very positive force within the conservative party. And she chose to go down this path of self-destruction. And that's what it is.
Stupider in the process. Finally, because it is our job to make the lives of our audience better, right? That's really our job, is to give you more information to make your lives better. We have a duty to propose solutions. That's why we have to talk about our problems in order to find the solutions. That's what politics was supposed to be about, after all, finding solutions to our common problems.
Right.
If we speak endlessly about the problems we face, without ever positing a solution other than wrecking the system or centralizing power in a cult-like figure, we are not finding solutions. We are merely making problems worse. Just asking questions, positing vague conspiracies, raving like Alex Jones about the secret confederacies that control your life, none of it makes your life better. None of it. In fact, it makes your life markedly worse. That's because if you truly come to believe that nothing in your life is in your control, you can't even take control of your own life. You despair of your ability to change your own circumstances, and then you fail. And you must not fail. Because here is the most fundamental truth of all in the United States. For all of its problems, many of which, a huge number of which, are real and serious, the United States is still the greatest bit of that begins with truth. We owe you that quest for truth. You owe yourselves that quest for truth. And true victory only Constitution ever devised by man. Thanks so much. Happy to take a couple questions.
my name is Jenna. I'm one of the co-presidents of the Turning Point chapter at JMU. I have a question. How do
This is a great point, and this is a trend and a cycle that we need to recognize as true. That is, everywhere that Candace has gone, she has destroyed relationships, to include Charlie. Telling you right now, there's a reason that she doesn't have any text messages since 2018. So we're talking almost 7 years. She has not had a close personal relationship. Charlie was kind enough not to talk shit about her in public. That's the grace that she got, and that was only because Charlie gave it. It was not a good relationship. I can tell you, I've talked to people close to both sides, actually, and it was not a good relationship. And most of what she's saying is utter nonsense as far as how close they were. They were like brothers and sisters. It's just like everything else she does. It's just a total fraud. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually show Tucker's response to this. I think it was a good response. You guys tell me what you think. As powerful as that was, I will say, and I agree with everything that he says, and there's many points in Tucker's argument that I disagree with. I was shocked at how powerful Tucker's response was. So that's just my personal objective assessment of it. That one's real quiet, huh? All right, let's boost this volume.
Thank you. Walking out is always such a trip at these things. I just got here, and I feel like I missed the first part of the program. Hope I didn't miss anything meaningful. But I just want to say, I don't think I did. No, I'm just kidding. I watched it. I laughed. That kind of bitter, sardonic laugh that emerges from you when like Upside Down World arrives. When your dog starts doing your taxes and you're like, wait, it's not supposed to work this way. To hear calls for like deplatforming and denouncing people at a Charlie Kirk event, I'm like, what? This is hilarious. Yeah, this is hilarious. Actually, one of the clips I was listening to myself, thinking as I often do when I hear myself speak, which is never, because I never watch myself, but at these events they always play like the role of you. I'm like, that guy is pompous. Woo! Sorry about that. We don't see ourselves clearly. But the prediction that, at some point when Republicans took power again, which I did everything I could, to help, and really felt that was important. I still think, I was right. But I really thought that the impulse to deplatform people, or even to use the word platform as a verb, which it's not, it's a noun, don't steal my nouns, deplatform and denounce. Why haven't you denounced somebody else? The whole like Red Guard Cultural Revolution thing that we so hated and feared on the left that we did everything we could to usher in a new time where you could have an actual debate. I mean, this kind of was the whole point of Charlie Kirk's public life. And I think that he died for it. I really believe that. And I know a lot about it because the last several months of Charlie's life were devoted in part to arguing about this event, in fact, this speech, in fact, my speech here, which he asked me to do earlier this year, this summer, and was immediately put under just immense pressure from people who give money to Turning Point, I would assume good people, but who wanted him to take me off the roster. And this has all become public, and the whole thing is so sad that I never talk about it, except to say Charlie stood firm in his often stated and deeply held belief that people should be able to debate, and that if you have something valid to say, if you're telling the truth, you ought to be able to explain it calmly and in detail to people who don't agree with you, and that you shouldn't immediately resort to shut up racist. You shouldn't immediately go to motive. By the way, shut up racist is the #1 reason I voted for Donald Trump. And because I'm just sick of it. I mean, first of all, if I was a racist, if I was a bigot, I would just say so. Okay, it's America. You're allowed to be whatever kind of person you want. I'm not. I'm sincerely opposed, have always been, and will always be. But the style of debate where you prevent the other side from talking or being heard because you immediately go to motive, well, I wonder why you're asking that question. I wonder why. Why are you asking that question? I detect in the question a certain evil in your soul. And everyone listening should know that listening to you implicates them, and that they someday may be asked to denounce you, and that friendship is not a reason to defend someone. Love is no defense. I kind of thought we'd reached the end of that. And as far as I'm concerned, we have. And I'm not going to play by those rules. I'm not going to engage in that. If someone doesn't like what I think, fine with me, as long as I get to express it. That's my view. But since we're on the topic, I think I should take the opportunity to explain why Charlie was under all this pressure. And I think Erica, who I just saw backstage, and whom I love, and who I can tell you is totally committed to continuing the core principle of Charlie's public life, which is the right of every person to express what he believes. That is rooted in Christian faith. We believe people should be able to say what they think because they have souls. They're human beings created by God. They are not slaves. They are not animals. They are not objects. You cannot tell another human being to shut up, even shut up racist, because you don't own him. He is an independent, autonomous person created by God as an individual. Okay, so that's where that belief comes from. That's where free speech comes from. And there's no accident. This is the only country in the world that protects it, because our founding documents were informed, as you just heard so nicely expressed by Michael Knowles, my friend, by people who self-consciously incorporated Christian precepts into their.
All right, look, I'll just say right now, I think what he's presenting here is a little bit of a false dichotomy. Of course, we don't have the right to tell people to shut up or whatever else. That's not what Ben Shapiro was saying. He wasn't saying just shut them down or anything else. What he was saying was that when they're doing something evil, which Candace says, we have an obligation to speak out. All right, when we see lies, we need to speak truth. It's as simple as that. And that is the bedrock of this country, is truth. Like, if we don't have truth, we don't have people reporting truth, then a democracy falls apart, because what we can do now is we can use information and manipulate it to where people believe something that's not true, and they're going to vote based on that. And that's exactly what Candace is doing with a lot of everything that's going on. I have just kind of quit watching Tucker Carlson altogether, because he's definitely engaged in it. And one of the things, one of the real problems that I had with Tucker was he basically confirmed the Egyptian plane thing. And what we see with him and Candace is we have this circular flow of bad information, which we saw the FBI use to get FISA warrants as well. Basically, what we have Candace saying, hey, you know what? I've done this research. I can prove that these Egyptian planes are doing X, Y, and Z. And by the way, they're not. All right. There's a bunch of videos. We've had other people on talking about this. The Egyptian plane thing is an absolute farce. And it's always been ridiculous from the beginning to me, because if Israel wanted to track Charlie Kirk, wanted to track Erica Kirk, there's just much simpler and easier ways to do that than follow people around in planes. If there's Egyptian planes flying around our country, okay, could be concerning. Probably not. I mean, there's probably literally planes from just about every country in this country at some point in time. So it might be something, might be nothing. Is it worth looking into? Maybe, but is it related at all to the Charlie Kirk situation? No. And what they've had to do is they've had to manipulate that data even to convince you that it could possibly be by saying, hey, this was following Erica Kirk around. And then the criteria they gave that was plus or minus 3 days, plus or minus 100 miles. So Erica Kirk could have come and gone, or Charlie Kirk or anybody with TPUSA could have come and gone within 3 days. And then because some Egyptian plane lands somewhere within 100 miles 3 days later, it's considered an overlap and we're now following. It's ridiculous on the face of it. So they had to manipulate data And that's not what they presented it as either, right? I mean, we all thought at the time when, like, I was, oh, whoa, these planes are falling. They're like Erica Kirk's planes landing, and then like a few minutes later, or maybe even before, like I used to teach surveillance. So we teach people how to surveil people. Follow them. You can follow them from the front. You can follow them from the rear. You can have handoffs. There's lots of different techniques you can use that potentially you could use in a plane as well. But that's not what happened. They manipulated data to convince you of something that wasn't real. So there's that. Now, again, you want to investigate Egyptian planes, knock yourself out. I'm sure the FAA, I'm sure the CIA, the NSA, the FBI are tracking these planes. They know what comes into our airspace. They know where these planes come from because they have to file those flight logs and all that information with the FAA to begin with. So they know what's going on. They know what's like. I'm not even worried about it. But they make much ado about nothing. And so what happened with that, though, is Candace comes up with this thing. She was actually fed this information from the tip line. And then we have Tucker Carlson find out about it. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's definitely true. And he's saying, oh, yeah, it's definitely true based on her research. So it's circular confirmation. And it's exactly like what we saw with the FBI, where they had this information that was utter trash. And then they gave that information to several different news outlets. And then when they went to go apply for a FISA warrant, the information that the FBI gave the news outlet, I believe it was the New York Times, they used the New York Times article that was fed to them from the FBI as confirmation and as a justification to get the FISA warrants. So this is what we're seeing, and it's a standard tactic in disinformation operations.
Structure of government. So Charlie was committed to that, but the people around him were like, you can't, because it's not that Carlson's wrong. My only point was I don't want a land war with Iran. I got over my skis and said I didn't want another regime change war with Iran. Rather than explain why we should have a regime change war with Iran, which I'd be happy to listen to, he's an anti-Semite. He's an anti-Semite. Which I said, well, obviously that's not true. And Charlie said, I know. And then it just didn't stop. So I continued to say, I'm not an anti-Semite. We don't care what you say. You're lying. You are. So let me just affirm one final time. Not only am I not an anti-Semite, and would say so if I was, I'm not an anti-Semite for a very specific reason. Not because it's unpopular or my donors don't like it. I don't have any donors. I'm not an anti-Semite because anti-Semitism is immoral. In my religion, it is immoral to hate people for how they were born. Period. But that is not a limited principle. That is a universal principle. It applies to every human being on planet Earth. You may not, you are prohibited by my religion, which is Christianity, from hating people for how they were born. Because God created.
All right, we got a couple of super chats. I'm going to go ahead and hit those. Yeah, Gary, being someone who liked Charlie, you should already know that he wasn't a fan of Ben's. Ben was never Trumper, and Ben was a never Trumper, and Charlie was an always Trumper. I don't disagree with that at all, but that doesn't take away from what he just said. I think what he said is absolutely true, and I think it's a big problem. Look, there's lots of things that Ben Shapiro does and says that I agree with, and then there's lots of things that he says that I don't agree with. Again, this is kind of a little bit of a false dichotomy. I know he was a never Trumper. That's true, 100%. He was never on Team Trump. I get it, and I disagree with him for that. But that doesn't – I don't know what you're asking me for right here. Like, when someone says something true, we need to say, hey, you know what, that's true. And as soon as he starts into the next paragraph, that's not true. Well, that's not true. All right, I'm with that. Just like I really like Tucker. It's kind of almost the opposite here. I really like Tucker. There's definitely things about Ben Shapiro I don't like. But I really like Tucker. And some of the things he says now and some of the things he's been saying in the last couple of weeks, I disagree with. And I think it's unfortunate that he is going down a different path. I disagreed. I don't have a problem with him having on Nick Fuentes and things like that. I agree with Ben on that if he's going to have Fuentes on, he should have pushed back and should have brought up some of the other most horrific things that Fuentes says. So that's my stance on that. Gary, run a poll, Team Candace versus Team Shapiro. No, I'm not going to do that. Can you put a link to your TPUSA interview in the description, search high and wide? Sure. I don't know if I even know where to find that, but I'll find it. Should be on their X account. People need to realize that the Islamic world has far more money and influence than Israel. That oil money can grease a lot of palms and buy a lot of favor. Threat equals Islam is greater than Israel. I agree with this. I think that it's intentional that we are now putting all of this scrutiny on Israel while we're taking our eye off the Islamic threat. There are many points where somebody can talk to me and say, hey, you know what? Our interests don't align with Israel. I agree with that. I also agree with the fact that Israel tries to manipulate the United States into doing things that I don't think we should. That's true. But so does every other country that we have diplomatic relations with. That's just a fact. And then we have all kinds of different lobbyist groups. We have CARE. We have, of course, AIPAC. We have tons of different foreign lobbyist groups in this country, and most of them are not working in our interest. All right? They're just not. And I think that's something that we need to look at. We need to be more aware of. But there is this strange and dumbfounding focus on Israel for everything. And I think it's just stupid. All right. And I do think that I also find it confusing. I'll leave it at that. You can't sit down and look at what Israel does in our relationship with Israel and come up to the conclusion that we just do everything that Israel wants us to do. Yeah, I mean, and I've listened to all the arguments, by the way. I sit there and because I want to understand where these people are coming from. And again, I've told people like, hey, you know what? You have this real problem with Israel. Sit down, come on the show. Let's talk about it. And I'll hear you out because I'm indifferent to Israel. I really am, man. I just don't care. I care about the United States of America. And the problem is, that's it. All right. That just kind of dawned on me right there. The problem is these people don't care about the United States. They just hate Israel so much. That is their main focus. They don't care if we can do something to Israel, even if it hurts the United States, they'd be willing to do it because they are so myopic in their focus for hatred for Israel. That's the way that I see it. And that to me is a little bit crazy. Let's see what we got here for other super chats. Gary, this den of viper. This den of vipers will be blaming you for Kirk's death next, morons. The crazy thing is that's kind of already happened. You know, Baron Coleman has brought me up multiple times searching us on these Google trends, and that's the implication. Is like, oh, look at, I thought Paramount, I thought that was a good guy over there, and look at this Google trend. He was Googled in July of 2025. Well, guess what? Baron Coleman was too, and he had Paramount Tactical. I've already talked about how ridiculous the whole Google Trends thing is, but that's already kind of happened. Like I don't even know where that goes, but it's absolutely ridiculous. Tell us how you really feel, Ben. I'm loving it. Stay on this fight, Gary. You are the rock and the truth and fairness. Thank you. If you believe what you just said, Gary, run the poll, Candace or Ben. I'm not running a poll. I don't even like running these polls. I couldn't care less what people like. I don't care what the viewers think. I'm not trying to win this popularity contest, TJ. Like, I hope you don't understand that right now. Like, I literally thought when I first posted that Candace video, I thought I was going to lose 100,000 subscribers. I don't care. I don't care. Truth is not about popularity. As a matter of fact, it's a detriment. I could be, if I want to be more popular, I could be toting some other line. So, I said this the other day, and it remains true. At the end of the day, Candace Owens' podcast is number one for the same reason that Jerry Springer's was the #1 show in the United States during the 90s. We don't care about truth. We don't even care about substance. We want entertainment, and that's what she's providing. I told somebody today, it's like you could have a documentary that provides proof that the entire world is going to end in 3 years. All right, there's that documentary, 100% true. We know it's true. It's going to end. The world's going to end in 3 years, but it also provides the solutions to stop it. And then you put that in the movies, this documentary, and right next to it, you put a Marvel movie. All right, that Marvel movie is going to blow the doors on that documentary that could save the entire civilization of the earth. That's what we are as human beings. So the popularity doesn't determine truth. All right. And I couldn't care less about it. I didn't mean to skip this one, TJ. You said Candace did TPUSA events last year, but they didn't talk or weren't friends. Come on, Gary, you're better than this. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I got an article up here. I'll pull up. You can believe it or not, but it's and I didn't even know this article existed. I was looking for some stuff while some of this stuff was playing. What I'll show you on that article is identical to what I've heard multiple people that were close to Charlie and one person that was close to Candace tell me the exact same thing. They were not friends. All right. TPUSA needed speakers and they gave Candace a script. They paid her to come out. What's so hard to believe about that? You don't have to be friends to get things done. I worked with a lot of people that I worked every day. I could form that narrative. I worked with this person every single day. We hated each other's guts, but guess what? We continued to do the job. And that's what it was about. So just because she did some events last year or some sort of, what would be proof is if we had any text messages from Charlie to Candace since 2018. That's 7 years. She has not provided any texts between them since 2018. That should tell you everything that you need to know. All right. I do agree with Tucker when it comes to deplatforming because I hate censorship. I agree with you. I don't think we should focus on deplatforming, but I think there's some nuance there. And I do think that Ben hit on it a little bit. The fact is there's nothing wrong with debating people and talking to people that you have significant differences with. What I do have a problem with, because I was looking forward to, and I only watched portions of it, but I was looking forward to the podcast with Nick Fuentes. And maybe it was my expectations. Tucker didn't take him to task on anything. And that's what I have a problem with. It wasn't a debate. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a competition of ideas. That's what we should never shut down, is the competition of ideas. But what we should do is when we see evil, we call it out. And, if somebody like Ben decides the way that they're going to do that is not have them on their shows or do whatever else, I disagree with that premise. That's not how I would run that company. But if that's how he decides that he wants to run the Daily Wire, so be it. Going to watch VFT, should have run the poll, Gary. Well, you know what? You're trying to blackmail me with your viewership. I couldn't care less. Go to VFT, TJ. Don't care. I talked to Nate today. I have breaking intel that 75 members of the People's Republic of Pineland are inbound at Fob Grift in order to muster forces for an attack. A little Q course joke there. Truth, logic, and common sense will win in the end. Thank you, Gary, for being a true American patriot and standing for the truth, logic, and common sense. You're welcome. Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens trying to paint themselves into martyrs, which Candace Owens kind of emphasized on Pierce, crying about the trash talk she got for asking questions. She didn't get trash talked for asking questions. She got trash talked and will continue to be held for lying, for manipulating, for being deceptive, and for accusing people of horrific crimes of which she has no evidence for, as she clearly displayed on Pierce Morgan. Radius Maximus, thank you, buddy. For those of you that want to support the channel, if you want to become a member, we offer that. Why does TPUSA platform Tucker Carlson? Because Tucker Carlson still is a huge voice in the conservative party. And I do think that no matter what, we do get caught up in controversy, right? And I do think that 97% of what Tucker believes runs parallel and in conjunction with what TPUSA is all about. So what you can't do in these larger movements, right, is actually allow minor differences in personalities. Like there's a big difference between what Tucker has said so far and is kind of going in the direction. Big difference for what he has done compared to what Candace has done. Candace is dead to me. I think she's a horrific person altogether, and I think she's doing extreme damage to this country and to the political party of which she says that she once was a part of, the conservative movement in general. Bending finding out live that retards just hate the Jews. Yep. Look, I do think this argument is nuanced, and I think that's hopefully. Look, I would rather have 100 people in the chat or watching our stuff that are smart enough to like distinguish one thing from another. Not everything is black and white. I think there is genuine and good people that have genuine and good criticisms about Israel. There is definitely a entire demographic of people that all they care about is hate for Israel. And I think we need to distinguish those. Those lines continue to blur more and more in some of the stuff, you're looking at X, you're looking at YouTube. And I do think that we get in this, we have a false reality of what's going on. But these are nuanced discussions. And there's things that we need to look at. And what we can't do is just, again, get on this have this false dichotomy. It's like you're either for Israel or against Israel. That's kind of why we got to where we were. And Israel's guilty of that too. It's like if you do criticize Israel, suddenly they come back with, you're anti-Semitic and all these things. That's a problem. That's what they do. It's true. But with that being said, they are a strategic partner. They're a very good strategic partner. And we should all be able to sit down and kind of look at the pros and cons of all these things. And for some reason, that discussion just isn't possible. I will be playing the Pierce Morgan clip. Let's finish this up, and then we'll play that.
A universal principle. It applies to every human being on planet Earth. You are prohibited by my religion, which is Christianity, from hating people for how they were born, because God created them with his spark in his image, because they have souls. You can disagree with them. You can hate their ideas. You may even find yourself, and I do, I'll confess it, hating them for a moment. But you can't hate everyone who's like them. You can't punish people for crimes they didn't commit. That's the basis of our justice system. That's the basis of Christian ethics. That's why we have what are called human rights. They apply to every human, not just your group, not just my group, but every group, every human, because we don't consider people in terms of the groups to which they belong. We consider them as individuals the way that God created them. So anti-Semitism is not just naughty, it's immoral. And it is precisely as immoral as hating any other group. And that would include other groups in the United States that are hated and have been under attack for decades. And that would include white men who did nothing to become white men. They were born that way. And just because you have a beef with a white man, let's just say Donald Trump, doesn't mean you.
Yeah. So, he's touching on exactly what I just talked about. Like, we need to show a difference between being anti-Semitic and then being able to criticize the government of Israel. There's a big difference there. And GS70 hits it as well. He says Charlie hating on Israel government does not mean he was not pro-Israel for the people of Israel. I agree with that. I don't think that suddenly, Charlie died being a Zionist. He was a Zionist. Make no mistake about it. He wasn't suddenly anti-Semitic or anything else. He was frustrated with the Bibi Netanyahu government, but his support for Israel didn't change. And everybody's kind of like turning that into something it's not. They want to twist it to their own means, just like everyone else does. But the reason that we have all this anti-Israel and some of the other problems that we have in this country is exactly what Tucker just touched on. For the last decade or so, it has been okay to be completely racist against whites, period, but especially white males. Like, and we're not going to put up with that. We're not, and I don't mean just we as in white people. All right. We as Americans shouldn't allow that to happen. If you are against racism, then we can't have reverse racism and go down this stupid mired discussion of like, oh, you can't be racist against white people. You absolutely can. It's sickening. It's disgusting. I'm not going to allow, I'll say this, I'm going to do everything I can within my power for my kids not have to grow up in a society that is, is constantly castigating them. It's not going to happen.
Decades. And that would include white men who did nothing to become white men. They were born that way. And just because you have a beef with a white man, let's just say Donald Trump, doesn't mean you get to punish all the rest of the white men in the country. And yet, our leaders, not just of our Congress, the executive branch under Biden, but of every major U.S. corporation, of every college in the country, probably except Hillsdale and 2 others, every single one for more than 10 years has engaged in a systematic effort to hurt white men because they are white men. That is racism that is precisely as bad as anti-Semitism, but it is much more widespread and has been so far much more damaging. And my point is, if you said nothing about that, or if you encouraged it by, say, cheering on BLM, which was an anti-white hate group, and said so, then you have no moral standing to lecture me about bias. Period. Because all bias is the same. You are not allowed to hate people based on their bloodline. We do not believe in blood guilt. We reject blood guilt. That's why our justice system is just. That's why our religion is just. Every person has the possibility of transformation. Paul is wandering around, Saul of Tarsus is wandering around murdering Christians. Then he decides, well, I'll walk to Syria, and he's met on the road by Jesus, who changes him, and in one day he becomes the most energetic church planter and apostle of Christianity. In one day. He went from enemy to leader in one day.
All right, just for the sake of fun, let's go ahead and switch over to Piers Morgan. I've been wanting to watch this entire interview to begin with, so we'll share this tab and I will go ahead and play this.
Amid all of that, she joins me now for her first interview since the meeting with Erica Kirk. Candace Owens, welcome back to Uncensored.
It's good to be with you at the end of another year.
Yes, and what a year it's been, not least for you. It's fair to say your fame continues to rise, infamy, some would put it, but you're always a welcome guest on Uncensored. Let's get to this extraordinary meeting that you had with Erica Kirk. It came right after we saw her say in that CBS town hall, you should just stop with the conspiracy theories. So who approached who about you guys actually getting together?
I was approached by Turning Point after Blake Neff, who works on Charlie's show, sort of fumbled this invite. It was, I almost say it was a fake invite publicly. And then in the middle of the night said, oh, Candace is not able to be here tomorrow. And they never messaged me. And I think there was quite a bit of public backlash with how they went about it. It just was just not the way that we.
One thing that I do find annoying is there's always subtle digs in everything that she says. So, it's once you hear it, like you constantly hear it. And after watching as much Candace as I have, it never escapes me.
We try to set meetings. And so what happened after was they reached out to me, said Erica would agree to do a live stream, just the two of us. And then after Erica's PR blitz, they reached out again and said that they felt that it was better for us to meet one-on-one.
Sarcastic Liberty. Tucker was my favorite next to Charlie. He's been such a disappointment recently. There's 2 podcasts that I listen to religiously. That was the Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson. And it just started kind of going in a direction where, and I wasn't even conscious. I was just like, man, I just don't like this podcast. And I turn on the next one, and I'm like, I'm just not hearing the old Tucker. It wasn't even real, like said. And then you started hearing more about it in the media. And by then I hadn't listened to a Tucker episode in like 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, I agree with you, Sarcastic Liberty. There's no doubt about it.
As opposed to us sitting down, having Megyn Kelly moderate, which was the idea originally. Right.
And so where did you have your summit meeting?
At a hotel here in Nashville.
And a lot of your supporters, fans of your show, think that you may have been lured into a trap. Did anything while you were there make you think you were being lured into a trap?
I don't know that a lot of my fans think that I was being lured into a trap. I think ahead of time, they had some concerns, obviously, because I think in general, after you see a public assassination and you start tracking so many lies that are happening, there's going to be an understandable amount of angst that people feel. And I certainly felt the angst as well. I've obviously been very clear that I am suspicious of some of the characters that are at Turning Point USA. So I totally understand why the public was concerned.
When you saw Erica, she was obviously angry about you in that CBS town hall. What was her demeanor like when you met her?
Well, I don't think that she thought she was angry in that. I think maybe that was the characterization from the public. I certainly thought she was angry as well. And she sort of clarified that she was a bit annoyed by the questioning, the way in which Barry had set up the question with the podcaster Candace Owens, which I think was definitely being driven more by Barry Weiss's feelings towards me, long-running feelings towards me, than it was perhaps for the benefit of CBS and trying to pretend to be an impartial journalist. So I think she was frustrated by the line of questioning, is what she explained to me.
So how would you categorize the 4.5 hours? If you were looking at it in totality, what was the tone of the conversation? What do you think you both got out of it?
Well, for me,
I want to pause this and bring up this comment, because I think it really does touch on at least the things that bothers me about Tucker as of late that I've never heard before. Tucker was very clear, even toward the end of his days at Fox News, of what a threat that Muslims in general, all right, Islam in general was to the American culture, and it was not compatible with the principles here in the United States. I agree with that. And then suddenly we start getting these weird, like, I remember this episode that he's talking about. Suddenly he brings up, he's like, oh, really, what's wrong with Sharia law? Like, he makes these false equivalencies out of the blue. It's completely different from all the things that he's ever said in the past, where it was like, if I remember this, the discussion or the monologue about it, it was more like, well, we have a religious-based system. What's wrong with them having a religious-based system? And that really does kind of solidify kind of the change and the evolution I've seen in Tucker is these false equivalencies. Even to some extent, I was following him along when he was in Russia, and I supported his trip and obviously his ability to go to Russia. He's an American citizen, and he's a journalist if he wants to go to Russia. But then it was this weird, almost simping for Russia. And I was like 1,000% behind him at the time. But even and people were pointing this out, and I was like, no, that's not what it is. But there was a part of me like, yeah, you're kind of simping for Russia. And it's a little strange to me. So I think that does kind of highlight my thoughts on this as well. So that was a great comment, Melton 7-9X.
First to the questions of trying to understand why there were so many Turning Point lies, and why instead of people acknowledging that these are lies, I felt that there was this billion-dollar psychological operation to convince people that Candace is just crazy. These aren't lies. These are made up. And so I was very refreshed that they owned up to the lies. That was a great first step. And I think What motivates that? Maybe because despite having what I would assume to be the best PR agents and crisis PR agents in the world, we're moving toward a different world where people don't really care, if you are friends with the people at WME and CAA and what they can do for you. That sort of power is ineffectual in this day and age.
Correct.
And so I think they recognize that, and that the public simply doesn't believe the story that they've been fed, and the psychological operation to convince us not to believe our own eyes or to trust our common sense instincts has failed. Okay, and I think on their end, they got more clarity on how I figured out certain things, more clarity on why I am convinced that there are people that are inside of Turning Point that are dirty. And I was able to share more with them off record. And I think that they got more clarity in exchange.
Before we get into some of the sort of specifics, is there not a danger here? I've already seen it in some of the reaction from people that follow your show. Is there not a danger that in seeking to be the one that exposes the truth? And I don't know the truth about what happened to Charlie Kirk. I work on the assumption that this lone, twisted weirdo Tyler Robinson killed him for whatever reason, and I suspect personally that is how this will play out. However, I have an open mind in the sense that we still don't really know what happened with President Kennedy's assassination. I found the attempted assassination of Donald Trump very odd in the way that that's been handled by the authorities and so on. I'm not naive. As a journalist of 40 years, I'm not naive enough to say every single thing you've been saying is obviously baloney, because I don't know. And we'll get to some of the more specific details. But is there not a danger, Candace, that by having a 4.5-hour private meeting, rather than doing it in public, that all you're really going to do, collectively actually, you and Erica Kirk, is fuel the conspiracy theories about what you may or may not have discussed in that meeting, what part of the stuff that you've been broadcasting on your show she agrees with and doesn't agree with, and so on. Is there not a danger this is the least transparent way of going about trying to get solutions here?
Well, I'm a very transparent person, so my preference was to do it publicly, but I took the offer, obviously, to have any conversation, because if I hadn't done that, then I think everything I've been doing would have appeared disingenuous. Like, oh, Candace is pretending that she wants answers to her questions, but when she got this offer, she suddenly said she didn't want to go because it wasn't public. They would have felt like I was moving the goalpost. So I was willing to take anything. And from their viewpoint, they felt like after the CBS News and the Fox News hits that Erica did, it was... my understanding was that they felt that it was a good idea to bring the temperature down first by having us sit down and communicate. And that doesn't mean that they necessarily say, oh, well, that's it. Now we're not going to have any other public discussion. I'm hopeful they will. I think they should. I totally agree with you. More transparency, the better.
Who else was in the meeting? Erica was there. Who else was there?
Justin Strife, who is the COO of Turning Point USA, and my husband was only there for a portion of it, and my cousin. So
there were no lawyers, for example?
No lawyers. But they did phone their lawyer because I asked the question. I was like, look, I'm open to being wrong, obviously. If there is something, which I think the media was kind of hinting at, that they had more, but they couldn't share it with the public, I said, I'm happy to keep my mouth shut, and I want to feel good walking out of here that there is something there. There is some sort of a smoking gun, and I will tell viewers just to be patient. And so they did call one of the lawyers working on this case, and it was not convincing at all. He said, in effect, all we have is what the public has seen, and we won't know more because we're investigating and looking for more. And so that just made me go, why is everybody being so over the top and ridiculous and using words like the evidence is overwhelming? It was Tyler Robinson, when they don't have anything that's overwhelming to show that they don't have a video of him taking the shot, which I think was something that I assumed.
A couple of super chats we'll hit. I need to stop every now and then to make sure we don't get hit with a copyright strike anyhow. Tucker Carlson interviewed Flaming Munther Isaac Lib in April. I don't know who that is. I'll have to check it out. I'm Catholic, but so confused why the damn Pope blessed the block of ice that Candace should be questioning. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not Catholic. I've been Protestant. I don't understand the Catholic Church. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I do, but what I will say is that the popes have been getting, I don't know, more liberal, more leftist, seems like, as the last 3 or so. Really some strange behavior out of them. Oh, Jay Witt stopping by to support my brother from another. Keep up the great work. Good to see you, buddy. Great talking to you today on the phone as well.
Okay, there's all these cameras. Maybe they actually have that video and they're waiting for a moment to release that to the public. They don't have that. Or at least I can say Erica's side has not seen that. And the lawyer communicated to me that they would not have access to that until earliest would be May. That right now they're just investigating, just like we're doing back at home.
You said that your motive for going to the meeting was that you would be able to come out and tell the world Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk. So are you in a position to say that? Do you believe, as a consequence of your 4.5 hours with Erica, do you believe that it is now most likely that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk?
Absolutely not. I haven't seen one piece of compelling evidence that Tyler Robinson scaled the rooftops like Spider-Man on a—
Again, she's being completely dishonest. This is what irritates me. Scaled the roof like Spider-Man. It's just one more thing. And it's always these little things where she's just constantly eroding the truth around the edges so that she can present some sort of counter narrative to what the evidence supports, so that she can continue this grift. She can continue to make up these wild, fantastical adventures that she takes you on, and with no evidence whatsoever. And I'm sure we'll hear more, but we know that's not true.
college campus that he didn't go to, and fired one shot, a magic bullet shot, and killed Charlie Kirk. I have not seen one piece of compelling evidence. In fact, I've seen more compelling evidence to the contrary.
You've seen their vibrant ads illuminating billboards and train stations for many years. Now it's time you actually... Who does Erica think killed her husband?
Well, I think that in her recent PR blitz, she sort of communicated that she trusted her team, and her lawyer was using kind of the same rhetoric that the media has been using, where, there's really, this is like, it's overwhelming. Maybe he didn't say the word overwhelming, but he was like, it's very clear, I think is what he said in particular. And then I pushed back and I said, what's clear? The affidavit? That's all you guys have? And I did tell him, if you would never be my lawyer, because it's just, a lawyer that's just kind of giving you adjectives, and I don't need a cheerleader. I need someone to be practical and to say, we don't have anything yet. I think the communication should be, we are hopeful that throughout this investigation, we are going to uncover more evidence that links Tyler Robinson to this crime. I do feel confident that he was involved in some capacity on that day, as I have said many times on my...
I would love to see her have a discussion with Andrea Burkhardt or any other criminal defense lawyer to go through these. I mean, that would be some real compelling TV, right? Why doesn't she have a lawyer on to go through the charging documents like we did? When Andrea was explaining how, what this is just a description of the evidence. It's not the evidence itself. But the problem is that once they get to court, like, they have to show that this evidence is real. And then on top of that, before they get to court, the defense gets to look at all of this evidence as well. And they hire their own specialists, they hire their own analysts, they get to go through all of this stuff and figure out what is true and what's not, what's contestable, what's not. And the problem that Candace constantly suffers from is that she knows more than everybody, and she knows more than a lawyer. Like, oh, she can look at this and say, this is trash, this isn't real, when she doesn't even know what this is. That's the problem that Candace suffers from. There's a couple of super chats. She says that Mitch is now Cabot, who was at hotel. All right. I'll have to look that up later. Can someone find out when exactly Candace went to Clarksdale, Mississippi at Highway 61 and 49? That woman definitely sold her soul at the crossroads. TR is cooked, unfortunately, like it or not. There is overwhelming evidence, and there's overwhelming evidence that we haven't here, and then there's just tons and tons more that we're going to see on top of what we know about here, that they're continuing to collect and continuing to compile. He's cooked.
Show, I was the one who broke the story that he was at the Dairy Queen throwing out clothes, a local Dairy Queen, throwing out clothes in a nearby cemetery. And so I do think he was involved, and multiple people were involved that day. And I think he did pick up clothes. I had communication with Lance's family.
So he's there, but she keeps saying he never even stepped foot on campus. Like, how does she know that? So he's there, he's involved. Why would you say, at a minimum, that, like, why would you say that he never stepped on campus? How does she know that he didn't step on campus? Where is she getting that information from? And what proof does she have of that? I don't get it.
I had communication with Tyler Robinson's family, and for some reason, Lance is being protected, which I find to be very strange. His own family thinks he's guilty of more, and they find it weird that the feds kind of glossed over him, almost as though he was a Fed operative, like he was working on behalf of them. And, you know, we've caught the feds have lied a lot. It's just a fact. Turning Point USA people have lied a lot. That is a fact, which they have agreed to. They said that these were mistakes, but they, you know, whether a mistake or not, the public was lied to. So
that's another thing too. Anytime that Candace has said, "Oh, I misspoke," and as a matter of fact, we almost need to replay the entire thing that she said when she came back from TPUSA, because she came back from her meeting with Erica. She debunked herself. All right, the whole thing, like this entire narrative that she's built, that TPUSA was involved, was built around Mikey McCoy and his actions. That's really where it started. When she said, "Oh, look what he's doing. He's doing some weird shit that doesn't make sense to me, so therefore he's guilty." Well, guess what? She got his call logs. She even walked away from that convinced that she was wrong about that. She does that, but she's spinning it the whole time. She explains that away without any culpability whatsoever. Never saying, "You know what, guys, you know what, I was wrong for talking so much about now how I'm suspicious of Mikey, of what he's doing and who he's calling and all those things. They proved it to me. I was just wrong about that. All right, so that's good to know. Let's move on to the next thing." But she's not honest enough to do that. And that's what she does every time. She's not an honest broker of information. She's not trustworthy. She lies constantly, and she's constantly deceiving you.
Yeah, this obviously, you know, matters deeply to me, and it's just absurd that people would think that I'm doing this for clicks. I know Charlie. I knew Charlie. Charlie and I are very close, and it has been one of the most disgusting things ever that people first and foremost tried to start this psychological operation that Charlie and I hadn't spoken since 2019. They've lied about virtually everything that I've said on my podcast. I'm not going to let this go. Okay. We don't live in a country that is the embodiment of democratic principles. Oops. If Charlie Kirk gets publicly executed and the media apparatus is doing everything they can to cover the tracks, I would say to cover the tracks by demanding that there is no further inquiry into what happened on that day.
Right,
that is not a country that I can get behind.
Let's get to some of the details, because it seems to me you've put up a lot of theories.
All right, I'm gonna hit some of these other super chats real quick before we get into this, because I kind of want to play this through. Tucker Carlson, once a lib, always a lib. We've been duped. I feel that about Candace. Look, I don't think Tucker Carlson is a liberal. I think principally, you know, from a principle standpoint, he is he's definitely conservative. Is he veering off into some extension of conservatism that I don't think that we're familiar with? And does he dip his toe into some arenas that just don't make sense? Yeah, but I'm not quite ready to write him off. I'm not following him, listening to him. You know, there's a part of me that's holding on because he is a super powerful voice on our team. Now, at some point in time, if he starts going down the road of Candace, where he's doing more damage than benefit to the conservative movement, and, you know, protecting the Constitution of the United States and the foundation of what this country was founded on, then I'll cut him off. I have no problem with that. I don't think we're there yet. The lawyers would never tell Candace confidential information. She would blab immediately. I agree. Candace visited Utah Valley with Charlie in 2019. That is true. I don't know what relevance that is, but it's true.
But a lot of them don't seem to have a clear conclusion from you about what you actually think happened. I mean, you've been all over this now ever since Charlie was killed. What do you believe happened to him? Who do you think killed him?
So I can't tell you definitively who pulled the trigger. I'm not going to lie to audiences and just put something out there that's not real. But what I can say is I feel
that's never stopped her before. Never stopped her. I don't know why she's pumping the brakes here.
Feel convinced that the feds were involved. I can tell you that. I think the feds were involved in staging a cover-up. I think Kash Patel knows what happened and did not happen on that day.
She's always asserting these unprovables. This is the problem. Like, I don't know what happened, but what they say happened didn't happen. That's what I know. No, that means you know nothing. That means you're just pulling stuff out of your ass and saying it. That's not true.
I am convinced by me being told by people that are feds that he is not acting right and that he is not wanting to share any information. Just a couple of people are allowed to even see anything. A fed told me that.
How does she know that these people don't have an axe to grind? How does she know that this information that she's getting is even relevant? How does she know that these people aren't another Mitch Snow, right? She accepts any information that confirms her bias. She will accept it and she will put it out on the airwaves. Anything that undermines her position on anything, even though we know it's fact, she doesn't share with her audience and she doesn't even put that into her calculus. There's so much ego and so much narcissism that she won't even think about the fact that she could possibly be wrong on anything and or adjust her position on any of this. That's an issue.
They can't even touch the Charlie Kirk file without risk of being fired, and that he's grown increasingly mad. The U.S. Marshals that were there when they were doing the quote unquote manhunt for 33 hours said that Kash Patel effectively sent them on a wild goose chase, which is what was signaled to the public when he said, "We got him," and it was actually the wrong person. And so it caused people to stop looking because they were convinced that they had the shooter. They felt that was in order to allow the real perpetrators of the crimes to get away.
Like, again, Kash Patel sent the marshals on a wild goose chase. No, everybody was on a wild goose chase because they didn't know who did it. So, including Kash Patel, there's no way he knew who did it.
No, but that could just be the fog of the immediacy of these things. We've seen it at Brown University. Exactly the same thing. They thought they had the killer. They thought they had the killer. It turned out to be the wrong person. Right? It doesn't mean there's any great conspiracy by the feds to cover anything up. And again, even if what you're saying is true, I don't know. Maybe you're right. If what you're saying is true, what is it they're covering up? You've so far intimated or inferred something weird involving Egyptian planes. So, what's that about? You've inferred perhaps Israeli involvement in some way. You've certainly inferred a lot of Turning Point USA involvement. That's a lot of people getting involved here in the murder of.
You forgot the French. What happened to the French? You can't leave out the French. Come on.
Charlie Kirk, potentially. But what I'm really curious about is, given you've been all over all this and you've been airing all these theories, well, which one is it? It can't be all of these things. Is it somebody?
Well, of course,
is it someone at Turning Point USA? I mean, who do you?
Of course it can. There's no possibility. Like, her entertaining the idea that she's wrong about anything, she's not capable of it.
And she believed was behind this.
Of course, it can be all of those things. And what's really ironic here is that there's a clip of Charlie in the last month.
See, this thing. Of course it can be. Pierce, you're just not thinking outside the box. Look, this stuff came to me in my dreams. Of course, it can be all of these people. It can be the French, Israelis, the U.S. government, TPUSA. It would also have to be all of the FBI, or at least any of the FBI that's investigating this, any of the Utah authorities that are investigating this, including the lab people. It has to be Tyler's parents. I mean, like, it has to be, we have to include all of these people into this crazy conspiracy that is completely incoherent. It's all over the place. She can't bring it together. She can't give us any sort of idea of what actually the mechanics of the day. All she can do is cast aspersion on as many people as she can possibly think of, and it just so happens to be all the people that she doesn't like. That's a weird coincidence.
Leading up to his death, where he speaks about the JFK assassination. And he says that multiple countries were involved, multiple people were involved, the LBJ was involved, the feds were involved. And he's correct. That is what it means. When there is a conspiracy, there are multiple people that are involved. Of course, there's not one person on a grassy knoll who shot JFK.
Well, it might have been
there are people who had to agree to it. There had people who would have had to. The Dallas police were involved.
Candace,
I'm answering your question. I'm answering your question.
But my point is,
see, here's the difference between JFK. And by the way, just because we have one conspiracy doesn't mean that the other one is true. Just like we could say that, just because QAnon was full of shit, like I don't see JFK Jr. around here. So we can't say because QAnon is full of shit, all conspiracies are bullshit, right? Like that's illogical in itself. Same thing goes with all these conspiracies, but at least with JFK, what we do have is a grassy knoll. What we do have is some evidence. Like there were rounds that were fired that hit the overpass. That doesn't make sense. There were rounds that actually hit a curb that actually injured somebody. The shrapnel from that actually injured somebody and somebody went to the hospital. That doesn't make sense. So the difference between all those other ones is that we actually do have evidence that point to a conspiracy. And when you're using past events to prove something that you have without evidence, those past events are not evidence in of itself that make your theory correct. And that's why this is so silly and childish with everything that she's putting out.
Why aren't you just going to point to one person? That to me, even that seems like a part of telling people not to believe their own gut. Obviously, for this to have been pulled off, there had to have been multiple people involved. There had to have been people at Turning Point that were complicit in having this happen. Now, who knows what their motivations are? Doesn't mean maybe this person's like, hey, I'm going to help you.
Hang on. Okay, let me stop you. Hang on. When you say obviously somebody at Turning Point, you are accusing right now people that worked with Charlie Kirk at the company he built, which is now run by his widow. You are directly accusing people in that company of being complicit in his murder, right?
I want to just be very clear connecting that dot. So I said that when there is a conspiracy, of course, there are going to be multiple people involved. So applying that same logic to JFK, right? Knowing, as I do, and as Charlie did believe that LBJ was involved, which then implicates the feds as having been involved, which then implicates the Dallas police station as being involved. I believe Israel was obviously involved, that they were the ones that wanted him dead for saying that what is now AIPAC should have to register under FARA. So there's motive. There are people that have to be involved on the ground now.
And again, this logic just kills me. It's literally like, hey, you got two sons and you've caught one of those sons with his hand in the cookie jar stealing cookies when he wasn't supposed to have it multiple times. So even though now we have some missing cookies, your other son, who you've never caught stealing cookies, is sitting there with crumbs all over his face. And, he's got melted chocolate chips all over his fingers. And the other son is like, no, I know he did it. I know the other son did it because he's done it in the past. Those past events aren't proof or evidence of a current situation. It's one of the most illogical things to fall back on as an argument time and time again. Every event we have to assess independently. And this is how people fall victim to psychological operations, misinformation, and disinformation, is because you're constantly applying things in the past and you just overlay them. You just project what happened with that onto this current event without taking the time to assess individually what's going on with this event. The government absolutely does have conspiracies. We have conspiracies without a doubt. The government absolutely does lie. But guess what? Candace and other people on the internet, they lie even more, without a doubt. So we can't just say the government's lied to us and we're just going to accept them as truth no matter what. We have to assess each and every person, every source of information, and every event independently. That's what intelligent people do.
That day, there are people that have to be willing to allow the perpetrators to get away. There has to be media that's complicit, and that's what literally Operation Mockingbird was. It was established to persuade the public.
Candace, here's the problem.
Well, hang on. It was established.
But here's the problem with everything you're saying.
In this massive cover-up.
You keep saying, and this is where people think you're prone to endless conspiracy theories for whatever reason. Okay. Is you keep using the phrase, they have to have been involved. So by that yardstick, what you're saying is with JFK's assassination, and we recently had a lot of the files released, which did not conclusively prove any of these things, right? Now, again, I don't know what happened to JFK, but the one possibility you've not ruled in was just as simple as Lee Harvey Oswald. It might have been. We don't know. Right. So when you say the media has to have been involved, Lyndon Johnson has to have been. But my problem is you're stating all these things as facts.
We can't do 63. It's such a nonsense to say that it was Lee Harvey Oswald.
You don't know that.
That's just such a nonsense. Like, yeah, no, I do know it was not Lee Harvey Oswald acting by himself. And then that required national security to lock down the files. And that required the feds to impart, the CIA to impart Operation Mockingbird to convince the public that, it was, you can't go against, there's a grieving widow. Don't look further into it. Don't believe your own eyes.
But let me just say, this is your, Candace,
it was a grand conspiracy that killed JFK. I am going to say that confidently. I just think we have to grow up. We have to grow up. We can't keep pretending Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK.
Fine.
We can't keep doing that.
That is your opinion. Today's show is sponsored by Oxford.
All right, we got a couple more super chats. We'll hit those real quick. Candace has no evidence on any, so I can see why the response to Pierce, LOL, and many of her audience called her out. Yeah. Anyone else think that we're in a wild Hallmark movie where a jealous, rejected woman is hating on the woman, Erica, that got picked over her? I don't even think that it's a romantic thing. I think it's, I think she is still pissed off that she got booted out of TPUSA. Candace is one of those people that thinks she's better than everybody else around her, and it's everybody else's fault. And she holds a grudge. I think that's more to do with it. Maybe there's some romantic things going on there. I don't know, but I see it the other way. Cash won't let anyone touch the file because he didn't want anyone to see it, coming from an FBI agent that gave her inside info. Dumb. Yeah. Would you ever have peak prosperity on? I think you guys differ on some things, so it would be an interesting conversation. Love the streams. Yeah, look, I've been on Chris's show before. Yeah, we could potentially have it. We definitely disagree on some things. There's no doubt about that. I like Chris, though.
It's an opinion.
No, that's a fact.
No, it's not a fact.
It's a fact.
It's not a fact.
It's a fact.
The whole reason there are still conspiracy theories about JFK's assassination is none of this is a fact. You are
because the
floating
feds
it
cover
as your
it up.
theory.
Because the feds are never going to admit to their own crimes. That is the reason we're still discussing it.
That may be the case, but you can't prove that.
Yeah, well, I can prove common sense that Lee Harvey Oswald did not stand on a grassy knoll and assassinate a president. And LBJ, like Charlie says in that clip, which people should go pursue.
Yes, I know Charlie
all
said
of the
that.
weird things that happened that day that were unusual, and LBJ decided not to ride that day. And then suddenly he reversed course on all of JFK's policies, and he was fighting AIPAC. Israel killed JFK.
All right.
Now, going back to your point about Turning Point USA and the ridiculous idea that implicating, this is a $100 million organization.
Yeah.
Common sense. If this was not even a high-profile political assassination, and this was just a guy who worked at a company that was $100 million, right? Common sense inquiry is, was there a financial motive for this person to be dead? Okay. This is like Sherlock Holmes 101. And this is what I mean when I say that the public no longer trusts the media because you're acting us to be stupid. And we don't want to do that. We actually don't want to pretend that we're clinical idiots who can't.
You have to be a clinical idiot if you think that there was a financial incentive for Turning Point USA to kill the golden goose that was Charlie. That is idiotic at its base. I don't care if any of the things that they talk about, which I feel like it has been pretty well debunked. They've talked about how they've had IRS agents. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with Turning Point's books outside of like some normal things that such a large company would have. I don't think there's anything nefarious taking place there, but maybe it is. Let's say there's $8 million, $10 million, $20 million. Like, that is a drop in the bucket compared to what Charlie Kirk is worth and his potential earnings for TPUSA. There was zero. Matter of fact, all the incentive is to keep Charlie alive at all cost.
Assess things and go, oh, there could be a massive motive here to have Charlie dead, especially when it seems very strange that Bibi Netanyahu, when nobody even had a clue of what happened, this guy's doing the rounds on Fox News and saying, I didn't kill Charlie Kirk. That's kind of weird. Did you feel compelled to jump on?
He didn't say he said he didn't kill Charlie Kirk because that was one of the first things that people were throwing out there. Ian Carroll and everybody else was talking about how Israel had killed him like day 2. By day 2, the mask was off. It was all about Israel. And then somehow this whole conspiracy ends up back with Israel, French, people in maroon shirts, the National Guard. That's why he had to respond to that. And we know it. And again, she's gaslighting everybody and revising history.
To Piers Morgan's show and say, just so everybody knows, I didn't kill Charlie Kirk. Why would he say that?
So
why was he so involved as somebody who's fighting a 97,000 front war?
Candace, I want to get to the reality of what you're actually saying. So when you say that somebody at Turning Point USA, Charlie's company, was complicit in his murder, who was?
I believe that there were multiple people at Turning Point who are, as I have said many times, my exact words are, they are engaged in a cover-up of what happened to Charlie on that day.
No, but who was involved in his murder?
See, this is the problem. This is a slimy politician way to weasel your way out of this. She, for some reason, thinks that she's not accusing somebody of a crime. You are. If you're complicit, if you're covering it up, number one, if you cover up a murder, the implication is that you know about the murder. So you're involved in the murder. Number two, no matter what, even if you didn't know about the murder that was going to take place, you didn't know there was an assassination. If you're covering up a murder, you are committing a significant crime. And for some reason, she's a little detached from that reality. This absolutely opens her up to defamation and libel lawsuits, without a doubt. And it's dumb. And most importantly, and I have seen this portion of this clip, she doesn't have any proof of that. And that's wrong. That's immoral. That's evil to sit there and say these types of things and then go on and say, you know what, this is a corrupt company. You shouldn't be donating to them. You should pull your funding from them. You shouldn't support them in any way, even though they allowed America to be in a much better place from Biden to Donald Trump. TPUSA and Charlie Kirk were the reason for that, for the reason that Kamala Harris did not win, and that we have a much better country than we did a year ago. Those are facts.
I didn't say that they murdered Charlie.
You said that people at Turning Point were complicit in his murder.
No, my exact sentence that I said was that there were people at Turning Point who are engaged in a cover-up.
No, you didn't.
I believe that thoroughly.
Candace, you didn't say that. You said literally.
I did say that on my entire show.
You said there were people at Turning Point complicit in his murder.
Okay.
That's what you said.
When you and I were discussing, that's why I said, let's go back. I was applying the logic of a conspiracy to JFK. I said, okay, if JFK, you have people that are complicit. Of course, if you apply that logic, if there is a conspiracy, there's going to be multiple people that are going to be complicit by the time, in order for a large stage murder to happen.
You specifically said, you didn't say complicit.
She's so unintelligent that she genuinely thinks that JFK, pointing to JFK, is proof and evidence of the same thing happened to Charlie Kirk. That's what she's hung up on, and she doesn't understand. That's not proof. That's not evidence.
Cover up. You said complicit in the murder, because I said who at Turning Point was involved in his murder, and
let me clarify for you. Okay, you can keep saying what I said, or you can listen to what I am saying.
Okay.
When I was using the analogy of JFK and we were connecting it, I was basically pushing back on you because you were suggesting that all of these people being involved would be crazy. So I was applying the analogy of what happened to JFK. Well, you actually, if you go back and listen,
I don't know.
Suggesting that a conspiracy.
I said you don't know either. You're floating theories.
When we started talking about the JFK thing,
listen, let me make it clear.
Piers, I really think you're not holding on to your thoughts.
Candace, let me spell out my thought very clearly.
When we started talking about JFK, the implication that you were making was that it was crazy to suggest that multiple people could have been involved at different levels. I was then connecting the dots and saying that in order for the JFK assassination to happen, there had to have been tons of people that were complicit.
I understand. I heard.
This is why I haven't gone after George Farmer. I mean, what other man can put up with that? I mean, that's just nonstop
Maybe you're the person who takes the cameras down. Maybe you're the person that told him to drive that day. Maybe you're LBJ. So they're not all complicit in the murder, but they're all at different varying stages involved in the cover-up. Right? So that's what a grand conspiracy actually is. And I do believe, so you don't have to go back and we don't have to go through it. I'm telling you what I think about Turning Point. You know, I am very known for being honest about what I believe. You know, I'm not exactly a person that you got to pull teeth on.
Sure.
I believe that there are people at Turning Point who are engaged in covering up what happened on that day.
But were any of them engaged in the planning of the murder of Charlie Kirk?
I wouldn't know how it was planned. Absolutely, I can't make that. I cannot confidently make that statement. I can say confidently.
How can you say that you know who's involved, but you don't know how it's planned? You know that Israel was involved. You know that Turning Point USA was involved. You know that the French were involved. You know that the U.S. National Guard was involved, but you don't know how they did any of it. How was it planned? You don't know anything.
That I know they're engaged in the cover-up because I've been investigating what happened on that day and what transpired thereafter. I've been clear. I've named those people on my show. I've said they are engaged in a cover-up and I've listed the lies. So you don't have to try to make something out of what I didn't say. I tell you what I think. It's already controversial. We don't need to get more controversial, okay? Do I think someone at Turning Point pulled the trigger? No. Obviously, I don't think someone at Turning Point pulled the trigger. We don't even know who did pull the trigger. So how can I say that they're...
Did anybody at Turning Point, in your opinion, know that Charlie Kirk was going to be murdered?
There is specifically 2 people at Turning Point USA, and I have communicated that information to Erica and Justin Strife, that I would not be surprised if they had foreknowledge of Charlie Kirk being assassinated.
But do you have any evidence?
I'm not going to name. I am not going to name those people.
She's not going to name those people, even though she's named those people multiple times on her show. Now she has ethics.
Okay, because it's not right for me to name those people until
you've done it. You've done it hundreds of times. Hundreds of times.
I know for a fact that they did.
Did you give the names did you give the names to Erica?
Yes. So I absolutely did.
You gave the names to Erica of 2 employees, current employees at Turning Point, who you believe were involved in the preparation for the murder of Charlie Kirk. Is that what you're saying?
I told them that if I were in your shoes, these would be 2 employees that I would look further into. That's
and what evidence do you have that they had any prior knowledge of the murder?
Because I don't have concrete evidence is the reason why I'm not naming them. So I've been responsible.
Got no evidence,
I'm not saying,
but you're telling the widow that.
Look, this is kangaroo court nonsense. This is Banana Republic stuff. This is the justice of dictators. What she wants is she wants people, I can accuse you of a crime and I need for you to prove that you're innocent. That's what she's done to TPUSA from the beginning. This is blackmail and extortion. I'm just going to throw allegations at you. I'm going to destroy your company. And all you got to do is give me what I want and I'll stop. If you just give me all the information, I'll stop. That's not an American principle. That should be condemned at every single level. You would not want, for those of you watching this now and in the future, you would not want that done to you. You would not want someone to say that you're guilty of murder on a global platform like Candace has, and then not provide any evidence for it whatsoever. It's wrong. It's immoral. It's evil. It should not be tolerated here in the United States. That is not freedom of speech. That is disgusting behavior.
These 2 people may have been involved in the murder, but you see the problem.
Well, what the evidence for it is people that there is not concrete evidence. It's like you're trying to get me to say something that I never said and then asking me to defend it.
No, I'm asking what evidence
let's
you've
actually
got.
go to. You're asking me privately, did I communicate to them that I think you should look further? That's called an investigation, Piers. Okay, so what you're doing is a strategy of like if somebody dies, you're saying to police, you can't ask any questions about anybody unless you have concrete evidence. We're at the stage of investigation.
I'm not saying
yes,
that.
you can,
I'm
and
not
let me
saying
give
that.
people in the public the permission to do this. Follow your instinct. If you feel something is off, keep asking questions until you get concrete evidence. And when you have concrete evidence, you should name those people. I don't have the concrete evidence.
You have named
I
other
find
people.
There inconsistencies.
Okay. But you have named other
I'm trying
people.
to answer. Piers, you can't ask me questions. You can't ask me questions. Let me finish it. I have communicated to them that their inconsistencies make me uncomfortable. I have communicated to them that somebody else who is a third party gave me some information that I am not yet comfortable as I am vetting it, giving it to the public, because that's the responsible thing to do. These are private citizens. And that if I were in their shoes and had more access.
Look, whether you like Candace or not, can we all agree? So you're sitting there saying it's irresponsible for me to name these people because I don't have concrete evidence. And we know that she has multiple times. She has named these people multiple times. So number one, right here, she's lying. She's lying straight to you. She's lying straight to Pierce Morgan. And she's saying that she has already conducted what is wrong. Like she's saying, hey, this activity is wrong, but she's done it dozens and dozens of times on her show. All right. She's a liar. I don't know what else you can take from that. IRS cleared TPUSA, GS70 Cell says. I have heard reports of that. I need to look at that a little bit more. The problem of Candace is all off the record information. I agree. And she doesn't show that information to anybody. Gary, you don't look annoyed enough. Let me help. Peanut butter on French toast is superior. We know that you're a psycho, Rage Bronson, to your peanut butter on your French toast.
As to information, I would go down that route, okay? Unless I am fully confident that they actually did have something to do, like here is the smoking gun, I'm not going to name those people. Okay. But the people I have named thus far are people that I believe are engaged in a cover-up. Like I said, hold me accountable for what I have said.
Let's talk about one of those people. Let's talk about one of those people, because the Turning Point producer, Blake Neff, wrote this in early December. Ever since Charlie's murder, Candace Owens has leveled a flood of allegations against people at Turning Point USA, people at Turning Point Action, and people who work for the show. She has made them against some of Charlie's closest friends and against some of his most dedicated employees. She suggested that Michael McCoy, Charlie's chief of staff, knew Charlie would be murdered, was happy that he died, and stayed silent because he was told he would be the next Charlie. Now, let's move then to, you said in your podcast that new information was given to you in your meeting with Erica Kirk about Mikey McCoy that's now satisfied you on a video on.
All right, so I didn't know that he covered this. This is not a clip that I've seen, and this is the point that I made. Like when I actually did a live reaction to the podcast she did after her meeting with Erica, she just kind of glossed over that whole fact that she had made so much and tricked so many people and convinced so many people that she was right, that everything that Mikey McCoy did was proof of conspiracy. And she just glazed over it like, oh, yeah, I was wrong about that. And didn't even say that. Didn't even so much to say that. It's like, yeah, you know, all right. And we just move on. Like nothing ever happened.
27th of October, you devoted the whole episode to this guy and his supposedly strange behavior. I never said I have
information that satisfied me about Mikey McCoy.
Well, I was going to clarify. Okay, well, you can clarify that in a moment. But let's hear what you said about Mikey McCoy before the meeting.
So we decided to slow this clip down, and we're going to watch this clip slow down so you can see that it is exactly 834 milliseconds from the time that you hear the shot. That is how long it takes for Mikey McCoy to put the phone to his ear. Now, why is that precise time?
Even this description, 843 milliseconds. Why wouldn't she just say 0.8 of a second? Even that is deceptive in and of itself. Like she's trying to make it sound so much. I don't even know. It's like a bigger deal. She does this. She exaggerates everything, and it's just constant, nonstop.
Timing so important because there's no dialing. Mikey didn't have time to dial. Okay, you can't dial.
You can't dial. You can't dial.
And put your phone to an ear in 0.834 seconds.
Now, what was the new information that you got in your meeting with Erica about Mikey McCoy?
So I'm sorry, your gotcha is not going too well, but I never then said, I am now satisfied that Mikey put the phone to his ear. When I presented to the public, it was what
I
Erica
didn't say that.
Me.
Sorry, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, you did say so you have
inferred on your
satisfied.
podcast. Well, let me give you the chance to clarify. It's a very familiar story when it comes to debt. The banks win. You peers. You inferred on your podcast after the meeting with Erica that you'd received new information about Mikey McCoy.
TFCS 5675. Candace Owens proof. A dream makes skin crawl and it feels weird. Don't forget vibes. We have Candace fans in the channel. We are doing something right. 100%. Gary, you were in this for the right reasons. You didn't have to wade into this. We appreciate you. You gave us hope when you entered this fight, and you were holding the line for truth like a real man. Thank you. Odorized ramblings. Thank you, sir. Says, Gary, peanut butter on French toast with real maple syrup is yum. The only thing besides my kids that come from my ex that's worth shit. You got to try it. All right, I'll try it at some point.
Which had changed your mind? Would that be the best way to categorize it, or changed some of your mind?
No, I never said that. I just presented it. Well, the only thing that I clarified on my podcast, if that's what they're getting wrong, is that some people thought that he was using a nickname that was his middle name, and actually his real name is Michael, like first name Michael, because I was like trying to find something, and I was like, oh, maybe he's actually using his middle name. So that's what I clarified on my podcast.
And you were given call logs, is that right?
Presented.
You were shown call logs? You were shown call logs?
They gave me a printout of Mikey's call logs, and I gave it to the public. That's it. I mean, they're saying this, and then the public obviously comes back.
So do you believe Mikey McCoy had any prior knowledge of Charlie's murder?
I can't say that he had prior knowledge of the murder unless I have something concrete. I can't say anything about prior knowledge. What I can say is what happened on that day. Mikey's behavior is weird on that day. I find it weird, like I said in the podcast yesterday, that what has been communicated to the public is like he called Erica instantly. First thing he did was call Erica instantly. And that's actually the call logs show that he didn't call Erica instantly.
But what are you suggesting about this guy?
Instantly, and then he had 3 ways.
When you got a massive platform,
and then showing his call logs showed that Blake Neff actually
See, this is a great question from Pierce. And this is where her followers run astray. He's saying, what are you suggesting? Because she is suggesting something, but we never get to it. So what it does is she has led the viewer, the listener along this route, and she points you to a conclusion that she wants you to come to. This is, again, basic psychological operations. This is what they one of the things they talk about is they want you to feel like you came up with this and you are smart. Like, oh, I get it. This is what's happening. Now, this is very elementary version of that. That same thing is taking place. That's why people, once they get there, there's no turning back because they came to that conclusion on their own wits, on their own perceptions. And therefore, now it's theirs. They internalize it. I'm not letting it go. And that's why they're so resistant to no matter what other information comes in, no matter what other evidence comes in. Even if Candace changes her tune, is like, you know what, I was wrong about that. They're not going to change because they are vested in that decision. And then you take that one decision that they're vested in, even though it was a conclusion based on bad information. And then you add another one, and you add another one, and you add another one, and you add another one. And the next thing you know, this is their identity. That's what's going on with this. And he's asking, okay, what is the conclusion? Because he's being resistant to this. He's like, I'm not just going to fall into this and fall for what you're telling me and allow myself to come to a conclusion. I want to know what you think. And what your conclusion actually is, you need to state it outright and not just leave it as an innuendo that's damaging to people's reputations. It's slimy. It's slimy stuff, man. It's gross watching this and seeing it for what it is.
And tell the truth about what happened on that day.
But here's the problem, Candace. You have a massive platform, as you know. Millions and millions of people hang on your every word. When you devote a large part of an entire episode to the strange behavior of Charlie Kirk's chief of staff, you are putting a target on the guy's back. You're inferring it.
Strange behavior in a completely traumatic, crazy event. Extremely strange. Like you can't sit there and judge a guy that is getting shot at. I don't know what was going through Mikey McCoy's mind at the time. She sure as hell doesn't either.
It's something to do with this, or something to do with some cover-up, or whatever it is you're inferring. You know what you're doing when you do that. When you saw Erica Kirk, did you say to her that you believed there's something suspicious about Michael McCoy? Was she able to explain to you why there isn't? Or does she share your view that he is somehow complicit in this in some way?
Well, we actually dedicated more time to speaking about his father, who I think it's strange to me that man calls himself a pastor. I communicated fully that everything about that man makes my skin crawl. I think he's a bad person. I think he's involved with bad people. And this is obviously Mikey's a son. And, I asked a bit.
Again, this is her own conclusions that she's putting out on, to millions and millions of people. Like, there's lots of people that I don't like, that I don't vibe with, right? But it's not right for me to come on here and say, you know what? I just don't like them. Again, we were talking about this. I was talking about this with Jay Witt. One of the things that she does, she's one of these types of people that when you're in a workplace, let's say I was getting ready to go and talk to a conference. All right. And before that conference, you know, she's up there and she says, hey guys, look, Gary's going to come across like he's cool and all this stuff. But I'm telling you, there's just something about that guy that's slimy. There's just something about that guy. And I can come in, have a great interaction with everybody, great presentation, whatever I'm doing, right? But then there's going to be that people like, you know what? She was right. Like, there's just something about him I don't like. And now you've created this information operation campaign and you are discrediting somebody without any evidence. It's you know, character assassination. It's just smearing people. It's wrong, and it shouldn't be tolerated. It's disgusting.
About Rob McCoy and Mikey McCoy's relationship, I would just like to be clear.
Give us a reason. Why don't you like him? Because somebody came to you in a dream and told you that he was just a bad person? I don't know anything about Rob McCoy. I really don't. But if you're going to tell me that he hangs out with terrible people, who are these other people that are terrible? Why are they terrible? Give me some facts here, and not just your biased opinion about someone.
I have never, I am not going to be emotionally conditioned to believe that asking questions when we aren't getting any answers is the crime itself. The crime was when Charlie got shot in the neck. So
you've already said, you've already said,
you know,
though. You
the
told
easiest way to remove,
yeah,
the easiest way, let me finish. You can't ask me questions, not let me finish.
You're contradicting what you just said to me.
You have to.
You said to me earlier,
what did I contradict?
You said you gave 2 names of people in the Turning Point organization that you believe are complicit in some way. You gave those names, but you wouldn't name them because it wouldn't be right to do that. But you did name this guy, Mikey McCoy, who was the chief of staff.
Because his actions are strange. You're 2 different things. I really, Pierce, I think you're having trouble holding on to 2 buckets of thought here, okay? You said, in regards to someone that was complicit in murder, that is a very serious allegation. I gave them names of people that would not surprise me if they did have foreknowledge of Charlie Kirk's murder. You are now shifting gears and you're asking me about Mikey McCoy and why I am raising red flags about his behavior on that day. Because I believe his behavior on that day was weird. I think it's painfully obvious.
So do you believe he's
I don't know
complicit?
people that don't duck when a shot comes down.
Complicit?
So I'm sorry that I have eyes, and I am agreeing with the public that Mikey McCoy's behavior was weird on that day. Okay, these are 2 different things. Now, if I'm going to make an assertion that somebody had something to do with planning this murder, I better be damn sure. And if I said that on my podcast, right? That's all I'm saying. I had never made that claim that Mikey McCoy planned Charlie Kirk's assassination.
No, I think like a lot of the claims you're making, it's difficult to work out what you're actually claiming. You're throwing a lot of mud in the air, including people's names, which immediately then has millions of people chasing after these guys on social media and thinking,
I'm sorry they get caught lying. Like, I'm sorry, what is this? This is like the public is actually being abused, okay? Let's stop pretending that the victim
are they, or do you just want them to think they are?
No, the public is being abused because you're basically saying, stop noticing that people at Turning Point USA are lying.
No, I'm not.
How dare Candace and the public know? Yes, you are.
No.
How dare Candace?
But when there's an emphatic repudiation of what you're saying.
If Mikey lies and Rob McCoy lies and Blake Neff lies, and yes, all of these people have lied on record after the assassination. And the public goes, hey, that's kind of a weird lie. You're like, how dare you put a target on their back by noticing that they're lying? I mean, what weird psychological operation is this?
Do you believe?
Lie.
Okay, but do you believe Erica Kirk has been lying about it?
No, I have been explicit on my show when people were saying, why aren't you attacking Erica Kirk? I said, because Erica Kirk has not lied. If to the extent that she lies, I will call it out. And that is why I did call out when she lied. Okay. When she said Charlie Kirk never received any text messages the night before saying that he was worried about that.
All right. I want to share another video with you guys real quick. And then I'll get to some of the live comments. Let me throw this up there and let's play this. That's there. All right. Oh, this was a recording, of course. That's all right. We'll go this forward.
Can be very good at, and females can be very good at that. Now, men can do that too, and they do. Have more sexual partners. They start engaging in sex earlier. They're more callous in their utilization of themselves and others. And so,
would you call that toxic femininity? Is there such a thing as toxic femininity?
We know what toxic femininity is. It's the female version of antisocial behavior is reputation savaging. Yeah. Gossip, innuendo, backbiting, and females can be very good at that. Now, men can do that too, and they do, especially on social media. But
that's exactly what we see time and time again, where it's just gossip, innuendo, and the intent here is reputation savaging time and time again. And that's what we see with her, without providing any evidence whatsoever. Let me get to some of these. Number one, I want to make sure that we got all of our super chats. And then I do want to bring in some of the live chats as well. Make sure we get to some of those. If you're Candy, I'll cash app. If you're a Candy, I'll cash app you 50 if you can summarize what we've learned from Miss Farmer in the past 3 months. Succinct, flowing, take me from A to Z. That is I don't think that's a challenge that anyone can meet. Gary, love your show, but have mercy on us. This much Candace is going to turn us into alcoholics. I feel dumber after listening to her. Not sure how you manage. Kudos. Look, man, I'm with you. I have a gun back there I need to review. We got some other guns over there that I need to review. There's so many things I'd much rather be doing. I'm telling you right now, this is important. This is important. And I want people to wake up. I want you to share this, my content, speak out for yourself, whatever it takes. Like, we've got to put it into this because this is extremely damaging to the fabric of this nation. And I mean that. I feel there's such an urgency with what is happening here and how people are being duped left and right. It's disappointing to see, but it's important. And we're going to stay on it until I feel like it's not important. And I can't wait to get off onto another subject. I'm telling you. Apparently, she had issues with who Erica dated before she married. Who cares? And I hope McCoy sue her. The woman is insane. I agree. First round on me. Heal our ears. I'm leaning towards this definitely being a psyop. It's scary that this woman has been able to manipulate the masses. This may have real world consequences with our election policy weakening our country. There's no doubt about it. It will. I think for sure this is going to have a major negative impact on the midterms. And, anytime that your side has won the presidency, you're already behind the power curve on the midterms. And this is just doing even more damage, without a doubt. All right, let me get down here to some of these live comments. We'll do like 5 live comments. Of course, he said the Candace is all gossip. Beholfeld said, I don't believe her at all, so I don't care, and I'm not going to answer. Oh, dear God. It's moving on me. Answer that I'm sure it could be slander libel. Well, let's see what Brilla said about old Gare Bear. I've already scrolled up higher than I care to. Rel 80 says the right will lose absolutely everyone in the middle if voices like Candace and Tucker are allowed to continue as its leading figures. I agree. And it's going to completely damage the credibility of independent journalism going forward as well. We're already seeing this. We already see this backlash happening on Twitter where people are saying this is why, it's coming from the left. It is coming from the left. But people from the left are saying this is why we should have, organized news with, editors, fact checkers, all of those things that we know didn't help us in the past. They used them as a tool to to validate disinformation and misinformation, and push narratives upon us. We'll hit a couple more, then we'll get back to, man, she just on full auto. Reputation genocide for monetary and affirmation gains. This is her mantra. I agree. We already canceled mainstream media and depend on independent journalism. That's correct. And I think there's a push on the left because the left loved it when they controlled the mainstream media. I think this is one of the things that they're pushing to include Google, to include, man, there are bots all over X that are definitely pushing her side of this argument. And I see Google, i.e. YouTube, pushing all of her content as well. And I think that there is a larger master plan that we need to wake up to and be aware of. And that is, if they undermine independent media, mainstream media will continue to grow in credibility again. And that's not what we want. And this is extremely damaging to this. Like, it's real simple. All you got to do is don't say things that you don't have proof of. Don't sit there and speculate to high heaven and back and then include all of your own biases into it. Like these people that I don't like. This, like, if you're reporting the news, which she is claiming to do, and she's doing an investigation, which should be objective in that information that she provides you, then all you got to do is have some journalistic integrity and not report things that aren't true, that you can't confirm, and you need more confirmation than your tip box that you just pull out whatever confirms your biases. That's not the right way to do it, and that's how you lose credibility, and she will continue to lose credibility. And I'm telling you, this whole Fort Huachuca is going to be the petard on which she hangs. It is the most ridiculous story. It is going to be the beginning of the end for her. And everyone else is going to wake up and realize this is insanity. We've been tricked. And that's a fact. And she's giving everybody a bad name. And I'm telling you, like, you know, people joke around and are like, oh, you're one of those QAnon people. This is, being a Candace follower is going to be a pejorative going forward. Unfortunately for you Candace followers. Like, oh, okay, I bet you believe Candace too, didn't you? It's all going to come out that this is all nonsense. It is. My spouse has days he'd lose his ass if it wasn't hooked on. But he has his DD214 where he knows it is at all times. He did 2 tours of Nam. He knows it by memory anyway. LOL. Well, thank him for his service. And to everybody in the chat, I want you guys to have a Merry Christmas. If we don't see you before then, I'm sure we will. Hope to see you all. But God bless you and all your families, even the ones that disagree with us. His behavior is weird that day. It's not every day that your best friend gets assassinated in public. I agree, man. Like the lack of charity that are given to these people, and the way that they pick everything apart like vultures and say, oh, this is a lie. No, it's just like, hey, we had a traumatic event. Not everybody's going to have their story straight because it's not a conspiracy. So this person is going to say something. This person over here is going to say something, and they may conflict with one another. There may be misunderstandings, like Frank Turek thinking that he was looking at drone footage when indeed it wasn't. It was just an overhead shot from a 360 camera. That's turned into, you know, Brian Harpold lied, TPUSA lied about having drones. There was no drones there that day. As a matter of fact, go watch my interview with Andrew Faraci. He was there from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. And he confirmed he had his own drone. He wanted to fly the drone. He was a photographer. Please go watch that. I just posted that by itself because we had a 5-hour stream yesterday. But there were no drones there the entire day. So again, that was another thing that was taken and turned into dis and misinformation. Just like the gun was the picture of the rifle was a stock photo. It was not. Just like they said that it wasn't announced until 2 days prior. That's a lie. It was at least announced by August 27th. That is for a fact exactly when, where that was established, and locals knew about it even sooner. I have people in my comments talking about how they were taking their kid to UVU August 14th, and they knew that Charlie was coming and where it was going to be. It was going to be held in the courtyard earlier that week. So almost a full month. And by the way, Andrew Faraci said that as well. He's like, hey, we knew where it was. I was informed about that event a month prior. So it wasn't this last minute thing that Candace has tried to turn it into. The other thing, you don't have to be Spider-Man to get on the roof. You can walk up to the roof. There's stairways going on. The walkway stops. There's a handrail, and then you're on the roof. That's another thing that she's continued to spin around and make you believe that there's something grander here than there actually is. I don't know about Tucker, but she definitely is. I don't even know if she is, but I think for sure she's being used as one. All right. We have forces that are at play here that are exploiting Candace, exploiting her platform, probably feeding her tip box with all kinds of nonsense. I think that was where the French assassin thing came in. I I think a lot of the tips that she's getting in are being fed to her. I actually, what I'm most likely, and this is again pure speculation, right? I want to clarify. This is just Gary talking. I think most of this is probably being pushed by the left. Again, kind of George Soros funded groups. They know that if they push what Candace is saying, there's so many of their goals that are achieved. It undermines the Trump administration like you wouldn't believe. It fractures the conservative movement like you wouldn't believe. It destroys the credibility of independent journalism like you wouldn't believe. It sows chaos in the country. And that is never beneficial to the party in power, right? Never beneficial when everything is chaotic like we see with what's going on with Charlie Kirk. So I do think that it's probably primarily being pushed by the left, but it is an opportunity that no foreign entity and intel agents wouldn't take advantage of, and many other nefarious powers out there. Today she blamed racism just like the leftist cult, of course. She's been a darling of the right, and that's the thing, she can't take responsibility for anything. She won't go back. This is the thing that she convinced herself. So many of her narratives are exclusive of the other ones, right? But she won't go back and say, okay, this can't be true if this is true. But she won't go back and say, you know what, I was wrong. Now I have more information. I've evolved on this, which everybody would accept. I would. I'd be like, oh, you know what? You're being honest. She has so much ego that she, instead of saying, you know what, I was wrong about this, somehow in her brain, she's going to wrap this all together. No, it actually can all be true. All of this can be true just because it was all true with JFK in her mind, right? Like, it's not how this works. Got another super chat, which I appreciate, folks. Do you think she is scorned over being fired and is taking the opportunity to bring down TPUSA, believing that only Charlie was smart enough to stop her? Just vendetta. Yeah, I think maybe it's even subconscious. I don't even know if she's aware of it. There's definitely a vendetta against TPUSA. And I think this is just an opportunity. Again, there's not just one opportunity here for I don't care what you come up with, the left, other countries, like it's a target rich environment. And the same thing is for her. She can destroy TPUSA. She can elevate herself. She can make money. Like there's a lot of goals that she's achieving here that for personal gain at the expense of her own integrity and her own credibility in the future. And I think it's very short-sighted. Let's get 2 more live chats and we'll finish this out. Tyler would be out on bail if his defense had strong evidence showing he was the wrong shooter, period. And any real attorney would tell you this. That, and on top of that, again, the most compelling portion of this is we've heard nothing from his parents. I don't care if I was Tyler's parents and I thought that he wasn't guilty. I don't care what gag order you gave me. I don't care what strategy the defense attorneys told me. Like, if the stuff that was said in the charging documents are not true and I'm his parents, I'm in front of a microphone. There was nothing that could stop me from getting out there. They were in the court the other day. I'd be screaming, he's not guilty. He's not guilty. This is all a conspiracy to railroad my son to the death penalty. We're not seeing any of that. That to me, just from being a father and a parent, is probably the most compelling piece of evidence out of all this. And then, we watched the Turkey Tom video. Man, there's a lot of good circumstantial information there that tells you what was going on behind the scenes, that makes all of this, just gives you a little bit of clarity on what was going on here. Let's see. The Cantifa members don't even realize that she just adds the people who talk poorly about her. Example, adding Shapiro today after he roasted her last night. It's true. Next thing you know, she's going to be claiming that Ben Shapiro was actually the one that jumped off the roof up there, that was scaling the roof like Spider-Man. Yeah, I don't worry about what other people believe either. But what I am going to do is get out there and talk to people and tell them that, like they're being lied to. That's important for us, and that's important for you. It's important for everybody. And just like Ben Shapiro rightfully said, the fact that there are so many people with large platforms that are Megyn Kelly is a perfect example. Look, she's a former attorney. She understands how the justice system works better than just about anybody out there. The fact that she has sat back and let Candace destroy TPUSA and attack Erica Kirk the way that she has, to me, is unforgivable. It really is. She should be out there talking about that at a minimum. And there's so many other people online that have been afraid to actually speak out about this. And I mean, it's just cowardice. Ask Candy about her adamant prediction of boots on the ground in Iran. Yeah. I agree, Gary. I think the tide is already turning. I agree with that as well. I don't believe that Candace was ever a true conservative nor a Christian. I believe she was an undercover leftist masquerading as a Christian conservative to destroy the conservative movement. I heard somebody talking about this the other day. I agree with you, by the way. I do think that from a principle standpoint, she never was a true conservative. I think at some point she saw an opportunity where she could shine. And she definitely met a certain profile. She's female. She was a woman of color. To come over to the Conservative Party, she was welcomed. And even though she burnt bridges, she was immediately accepted into, she went from, she went from Ben Shapiro's organization. I'm running on steam, folks. And then TPUSA and back and forth and everywhere else. Like, she's never not had a job because she fits a profile. That is very good. Somebody was talking about the other day about her interview with Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan asked her about climate change. And what he said was, if I'm sitting across from the table and it's somebody that I disagree with, and they can't fully articulate their argument of why they disagree with me, he's like, I chalk it up to whatever, right? But he's like, I have a real problem with people on my side that claim they're conservative that should understand this. And by the way, their entire job is to be a talking head and to be able to explain different elements of what we believe as conservatives to people that question them. And when Joe Rogan asked her about climate change, she said, I just don't believe in climate change. She wasn't using the phrase at the time that she would use now. She would just say it's fake and gay. He's like, but it really dawned on me that she actually doesn't understand what being a conservative is. And she's learned some talking points that she can regurgitate. But beyond that surface level understanding of these different principles and the different issues that we're trying to take on as conservatives and fight back against the left and other forces that are just, quite frankly, anti-American, she's not capable of doing that. And we even see her, she's really good when she's just sitting in front of a camera and reading a script and she can control her environment. But every time I've seen her in like these debate situations, she comes off horrible, right? She just tries to overtalk, and she wants to be right by volume of words as opposed to actually using words that make sense and present a compelling argument. She hasn't done that once, and that's kind of her MO. All right, let's move on.
That he was going to get murdered tomorrow. I instantly said, well, here we have it. That's a lie. He definitively did send out text messages to both Dan Flood and Andrew Kolba. And when we met in person, she clarified that, okay, yes, that's real. And we didn't know until you said it because he was using a different app and she was checking his iMessages. So to me, if you lie, you're going to make an enemy of me. Just don't lie. How about that basic requirement to say to people, don't lie about what happened on that day. Don't lie about what you did on that day, because that's the first clue to investigators that person should be looked at further.
All
Again,
right.
this is common sense.
Okay, let's move to something else Blake Neff said. He said, Candace has made other stranger allegations involving French paratroopers in maroon shirts, Egyptian Air Force planes flying out of Provo, Utah, and potential underground assassins traveling through unseen tunnels. At one point in early November, she started wildly throwing suspicion on members of Utah Valley's soccer team for wearing hoodies. I could go on. There's always something new coming up. None of it ever pans out because from the start, there's been nothing there. What do you say to that?
He's lying. And that's the reason why Blake Neff is a suspicious character. I mean, him saying that I pointed to a soccer UVU person is complete fiction. I never had discussed that person on my show. Somebody was asking for a clearer photo of the person on X, and I shared it. No suspicion. Never said this person had anything to do with anything. I never covered him as a suspect on my show of anything at all. Didn't ask for more information on this person. That kid instantly responded and said, oh, those are our school colors. And that was it. And Turning Point tried to turn it into a thing. Why are you doing that? Regarding the Egyptian planes, that's a fact. Why are you saying she said that there was a military Egyptian plane on the ground that day? There was. In fact, there were two. So why are you pretending that that's like a weird thing to notice? And that is why people have been flagged about these planes. To his
let me ask you about the plane.
All right, so before I ban this one, this is what our chat's flooded with. You know, Paramount has ties to Israel, received TPUSA funds, both of which are false. I've never received any funds. And again, you're going to be banned, and anyone else that says any of this nonsense, it's just ad hominem character assassination attacks, you're going to be gone. So there you go.
You're allowed to answer a single question that you say in entirety before you move on to the next question.
You can't just keep talking ad infinitum. I'm allowed to ask you another question.
No, it's called answering. You just read an entire statement of multiple points of Blake's. I got to the second point, and you're like, let me ask you a question.
Filibustering is exactly what her main tactic. And again, it's just, I'm not going to take a breath. I'm just going to keep talking over you, and it's not going to make sense. But as long as I keep talking, then you can't talk over me, and then I can walk away and I feel like I won the debate because I talk more than you. It's not how these things work.
No, I want to ask you.
You already asked me a question. I'm trying to answer the question that you asked.
No, I want to ask you a follow-up specifically about the Egyptian planes, given you've now addressed it, which is, where is the evidence that any of these Egyptian planes were tracking Erica Kirk?
I am going to be publishing the full document because there's not even just 2 planes. There's actually 4 planes that have been flying in, and I should be more thorough because I realize that the spreadsheet I posted, can I just please, without you cutting me off, answer one thing? Okay, thank you. These Egyptian planes, more broadly speaking, now that we have gone deeper onto the planes, recognizing that the reaction to them is not normal, what we can say is that these Egyptian planes are tied to Israel. They've been flying in and out of Israel with their transponder off for years. But regarding the Turning Point USA picture, more broadly speaking, Turning Point USA, obviously Erica has been involved in a lot of the church stuff. It's not specifically.
Folks, this is absolutely true. Even going back a year ago, people were coming on, as we talk. For those of you who don't know, we've been doing a live stream every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Then we do it at 8 p.m. now. It seems to be a better time. But, that's our only scheduled live stream. And then when I think it's relevant or we're doing something else, we'll have more. But, we've been talking about conservative politics every Wednesday for the last several years. And many times over the last year or so, people have come on here and talked about Candace and kind of what I'm doing with Tucker right now. Like, yeah, there's some weird things going on there, but I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I've defended Candace. And I did. I really liked Candace. This is one of the most disappointing things for, it's disappointing to see her decide to go down this road and to reveal herself for the terrible person that she is. It is. It's a sad thing to see. It's sad that any American would think that this type of behavior is okay. It's not. And not only is it not discouraged, it's encouraged, and it's incentivized, and it's monetized. But thanks for bringing that point up. Just to make sure I read it. Gary, this is what I love about you. She lost credibility from me years ago. You used to defend her, but as she revealed herself to be an opportunistic sensationalist, you again followed the evidence. And there's many things that I've evolved on throughout this thing, starting at the very beginning on September 10th when Charlie was killed, because we're looking at evidence. We're going places. We go see people. We talk to eyewitnesses. I set aside my biases and just listen and okay, trying to get a clear picture of what's going on and not just trying to interject and project what I believe on the situation. That's not how you get good results, and that's not how you come to good conclusions.
Tracking just Erica. It's Turning Point faith events. Broadly speaking, I gave that information as well. I told Justin Strife and Erica, I'm happy to give you this color-coded spreadsheet. There's no question there's a correlation here between Turning Point USA faith in particular, which, by the way, from the beginning of this, I've said something is wrong with this faith contingent, especially because Rob McCoy for a while was heading up that department, and he makes my skin crawl. And so, yeah, I have the evidence for that. and we're going to actually publish it on our website.
Right,
so there can be no question, which I should have done from the very beginning.
But let me ask you.
Showing that these planes were tracking Charlie. At various times there were Erica is, various times there were Rob McCoy is, but the consistent thread here is faith events like Kingdom to the Capitol tour.
Assuming you're right, and I don't know, but I know Erica Kirk, when asked about this, said on CBS, if you want to go through my flight log, go right ahead. It's very boring. You, Candace, say I was here on this date. I have a photo on my phone to prove I was actually in hospital having contractions. So that's one thing she's directly repudiated. But let's assume for a moment you're right, and that all these Egyptian planes were flying around tracking Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, Faith and Erica Kirk. Why? What is your theory?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, what's your theory then? You must have an idea.
My theory is that we should investigate everything strange that happened on that day so we can figure out what happened.
But are you suggesting that? Are you suggesting
why is everybody
Egypt?
Why are we pretending that we don't know why we ask questions? Like why? Like you're a journalist.
But
you know what this is. You're like, what's going on? What's going on?
Theory?
Why do you want to know why these planes were tracking Charlie? Well, my theory is that we are being sold absolute fed slop. The media is doing their operation.
Like all this stuff is garbage. All this stuff is garbage, but I can't present to you anything as an alternative. It's just like, this is trash. Egyptian planes, bees, people wearing maroon, like, and people fall for it. And it's crazy to me.
Mockingbird Part 2 scenario by telling us, well, unless you absolutely have a conclusion, you can't even ask the question. Yes, we very well can keep asking consistent questions until we get a clarified explanation for what happened on that day. And right now, we have nothing, okay? And that is the reason why people are watching my show, because I'm the only one not treating them like they're absolute idiots who don't have two eyes and who believe in magic bullet theory and who understand that Egyptian planes should not have been tracking Charlie.
Just filibustering. Talk more. The more you talk, the more you win the argument.
Even 3 times this year would be an anomaly, okay? They've been tracking him. We don't know where it's going to end, but we are going to keep asking questions until we get clear answers.
Candace, it may be that the person in the media spewing bullshit to the public is you.
No, nice try. It's not. It's you by saying, why are you asking questions? Don't you worry about Mikey's feelings? Everyone knows what this is. And like I said, because we have the example, the concrete example of after JFK's assassination, the media members quite literally being put on the payroll of the CIA. We have a historical example that we can look at and go, we're not doing that again. Doesn't matter how many times you keep telling the public that I'm spewing bullshit. It is only because there has not been anything that has come out of this investigation that makes any sense that the public is not listening to. I am sorry to say this, Piers, people like you. And what I love about you and I sitting down is that this exact same time last year, you were doing the same weird questioning and making all these things when I said that they were committing a Holocaust against the Gazans, and then you changed your mind.
Actually,
Piers,
this time,
I'll see you next year when you change your mind again, and we have more information about what happened, and you realize that the difference between me and you is that I have the courage to take the risks and ask the questions first, okay, before it's popular. You wait until it becomes popular, and then you change your mind.
You may remember that one of you.
All right, so there's a lot of discussion about Mitch. Yes, Mitch is being debunked as we speak. We got a lot. Trust me, I've been on the phone all day. I've been talking to people. Emails have been sent. Don't worry about Mitch.
Your courageous moves was to repeatedly tell the world that Brigitte Macron is a man. As you now know,
and she is.
As you now know, we had a $300,000 bet to charity about this because she's a woman.
Yes,
is my view.
She's not a woman.
Well, we're going to find out. Is the point, because it's going to court. They're suing you, and when she proves, as she will, that she's a woman, because it's very easy to prove, and you lose that case, then
so easy that she refuses to do it for years.
But then it will become more obvious to people that. Look, I think you're a brilliant operator at what you do. That's, I like you personally. You know that, right? None of this is personal for me about you at all. I just have watched him last year from Brigitte Macron now into the Charlie Kirk story. I think you've developed a modus operandi, which, to put it politely,
we're going to listen to that part right here. B. Holefield, we shouldn't try to force anyone, but we need to get our message out more vigorously. I agree with that. The other thing that we need to do is when we know that people are lying and deceiving, because there was a period of time that I realized I knew what Candace was putting out was nonsense. Let's say the first month. Let's break this up into 3 1-month periods. I gave her some leeway. Number one, I wasn't paying that much attention to her. I was paying attention to what I was finding out and actually going to UVU and doing other things. And then I kept hearing these crazy conspiracy things, and we started hearing about Israel and more, and it became a fever pitch. And I started paying attention directly to what she was saying, and it was clear to me that she was not only knowingly lying, she was intentionally deceiving, amongst other things. And I thought that, you know what, people are going to, it was so ridiculous to me as I watched some of her early episodes that, like, this isn't going to continue. Like, people are going to find this out real quick. And I was wrong. And then I did have the interview. The turning point for me was the interview with Brian Harpole, and seeing him and how him and his team have been affected by this, the death threats they've been getting, and all the things that she's been saying, and seeing the real human damage that she's causing with zero evidence. I realized I was like, nope, not going to do this. Like, I'm not going to stand by and be neutral and just stay over here. Like, this needs, when people are lying and people are damaging this country, we have a responsibility to stand up and have some freaking courage and call it out for what it is, regardless of the consequences. There is nothing more important than your integrity and the truth. You should be willing to risk it all, lose everything for your integrity and the truth. That's how important it is. And if you're not willing to do that, then I don't know. I would say, I've thought about this a lot lately. What makes, like, when do you go from a boy to a man, or from a girl to a woman, and you are truly mature, independent? And I think it's that. I think that's when you're truly a man, especially when you are willing to risk everything for the truth, and you're willing to risk everything for your integrity, even the smallest things. I remember just a few years ago, my wife had come into the kitchen and she was griping about some stuff, right? And I have always tried, and I'll sometimes fail. Look, I'm human, but integrity has always been important to me. And as I get older, it becomes more and more important to me. But, you know, most of us are really good at not lying about the large things. Like, you know, we're doing the right thing, and we know when a lie is a lie. But a lot of us are bad about white lies, right? And I remember this was probably 3 or 4 years ago. My wife came in the kitchen. I had made a mess over there on, like, the toaster or something. I don't remember what it was. But she was like, "Who made this mess?" And without even thinking, it was something to the effect of, like, "Oh, I don't know," you know, and I was basically kind of casting the blame on my kids, you know? And it's one of those little white lies that you tell. And I realized at that moment, and I took responsibility for it. But I thought about that. That really affected me. And I thought about that long and hard. Like, if you can't tell the truth about the little things, then you're going to let the big things go too. And I committed at that moment, like, I am going to tell the truth, even about the small things. There is no such thing as a white lie. Every white lie is an erosion to your person, and definitely to your integrity. Like, you have to tell the truth no matter what, even when it's not comfortable, and especially when it's not comfortable. And yeah, we all fail at things like that. But that's why this is so important, because I'm watching what's taking place to our country, and I'm not going to stand by. I don't care if it costs me my channel. This is obviously not beneficial, right? Getting out there. And again, I genuinely thought when I posted that first Candace video that I was like, you know what? I'm making a stand. Send it. You know, my wife was like, you know, we probably should just stay out of this. We're going to get the crazies. And we do, right? You guys see the chat. I've never seen anything like this. We've talked politics for many, many years. I've always been conservative, always pushing the Second Amendment, which has always brought the crazies out. There is no crazies like the Candace crazies. Nothing like it. Like, the amount of vitriol, hate, attempts at, character assassination, attempts at personal smears, the personal attacks. I've never seen anything like this. This is literally needs to be documented. It is a case study in the American psychology and the psychological operation that's taking place. Let me see if there's any super chats I missed. Oh, there's quite a few. Let's go through these. This wasn't a super chat, but I wanted to cover it. Tucker just did a show on the detriment of the Somali invasion of Minnesota and Maine. Minnesota, that's Maine, but I don't think that's what he means. He never said Sharia law is good. I still see Tucker as a voice of truth and reason. Steve Bannon too. Friendly fire is nuts. Yeah, I generally agree with that. And again, just because there's some weird things going on, what I have seen is definitely an evolution that I don't like of Tucker Carlson. I'll leave it at that. And it doesn't. I hope that he stays true to his principles. And it's okay if people have some fringe beliefs or say some fringe things from time to time, as long as they stay principled on what we started following them to begin with for, right? Like, so there's that. I agree with you to a large extent there. Trumpinator 47 says the left uses any tactic they deem necessary in order to win, and the right sticks to the rules so they lose. There's a lot of truth to that. The other thing that the left is much better at, and again, this has been exploited in this event. Like, we are not monolithic in thought. There's a lot more thought and policy diversity amongst the right. And it's why we're defeated more often than we should be. The left is good at staying on script. They just parrot whatever they're told. And that's one of the things that's really bugged me about this event is we see the same thing. It's almost like a brainwashing where people are just parroting these things, and most of them are just completely untrue, easily proved untrue. And yet they just parrot them and they say the same things, just like we're seeing in the chat. He's getting $7,000. He's a Fed. He's this. Like, it's the same thing. And it's a bunch of lemmings walking around just parroting what their leaders have been told. In this case, the leadership happens to be Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, Mel the Crazy Lady, Ryan Mata, and several other ones. Coach Colin, like Project Constitution. It's crazy to watch. PSYOP designed to cancel conservative voices and upset the elections. It's actually working, and the right are too stupid to see it. Agreed. Boy Next Door, another great comment. Candace is out of control, but just because Tucker feels a loyalty to her as a friend doesn't make him an enemy or mean that his views align with hers when it comes to Charlie Kirk's assassination. Again, I agree with that. But Tucker is intelligent enough to know when someone is lying like she is, and he has the responsibility, just as Ben Shapiro pointed out, to stand up to that and say, hey, just because we're friends, we set that aside. What you're doing is wrong. All right, we can still be friends after this, but you got to correct course. That was Ben Shapiro's point. Exactly. Candace makes insinuations with just asking question statement, which is just cowardly way of avoiding defamation. And I don't think it's as effective as she thinks it's going to be. You're confronting a serious threat to our country. I feel the same way. I feel very impassioned about this. Gary, I support you. Thank you very much. Everybody unplug and have a Merry Christmas. All right, we're going to finish this out, and then we're going to do just that.
Is you flying what we would call in the world of journalism kites, and just seeing what can cause the most merry hell, therefore get you the biggest audience, therefore make you the most amount of money. And people have, as you know, you've been widely attacked now by a lot of people who say that you're just a ghoul, a vulture. You're doing this deliberately. You're inventing things or just flying ludicrous conspiracy theories to make money. Now, again, Candace, I don't know that you are, but I do know
celebrity.
Can you not interrupt me?
I do think it's pretty rich.
All right. So again, another case in point here. Instead of addressing what he's saying and having an argument against it and saying, no, that's not what I'm doing, she turns it right around. It's like watching a psycho woman have an argument with you, like, hey, you shouldn't have done this. Yeah, well, you were an asshole last week. So that's where she's going with this.
It's pretty rich coming from you is all I'm going to say. That's me putting it very nicely, given your background, your career, your celebrity involvement.
I mean, do you not see how slimy this is? She's basically, again, extorting him into silence. That's what's going on here. She's implying that she knows some things about him or is going to use some stuff. She's willing to go and bring it up on the air. When he's talking about her, she agreed to come on to this interview. And he's talking about the things that she's doing, but instead of addressing the here and now, she's going to pull back from many, many years ago and use that as ammunition against him and damage his credibility as opposed to address the questions of her credibility right here in the moment.
To the Princess Diana, wrong messenger is what I'll say right off the top. Okay, wrong messenger. What you are mistaking, or I guess we're not even mistaking because you know what this is. You're talking about power versus the people, and you are always on the side of power first. You're on the side of the Israelis. It's so horrible. And, oh, I'm going to pretend I don't see tens of thousands of Gazans dying.
I've actually been very critical of the Israelis, as you know,
where
in the
your
last
bread
year.
Is buttered. Everybody
I've actually
knows
been very
Brigitte
critical of the
Macron
Israeli
has a
government.
penis. Okay, it's very easy to present photos of 30 years of your life. Brigitte keeps teasing. Oh, Brigitte, we're going to find out for a blood test. We asked you for some photos and you refused to do it. And everybody knows that Charlie Kirk was not shot by Tyler Robinson on a rooftop. I am sorry that in this day and age, there seems to be such a shortage of testosterone that a woman has to be the person that states the obvious, right? I invite you to join me, and I know that you will by the end of next year, because they're not going to get away with what they did to my friend Charlie Kirk. And I am not going to change my mind, least of all when I am being called names by someone who has quite a year background and experience in doing things because it's lucrative and not always because it's sensitive.
Sure, listen, you can call me a hypocrite as much as you want. I don't care. It's fine. I'm just simply saying what other people have been saying about you. I didn't say I felt that.
Thank you.
I said
I'll let you know what people are saying about you too. I'll keep you posted.
I read it
what people are saying
like
about
you. I read it all the time. But I would say
again, I mean, what in the actual F? Like, oh, I'll tell you what everybody's saying about you. Like, we're not talking about me. We're talking about you and what you're doing. And instead of addressing what we're talking about and having any sort of statement about what's happening here, now we've turned it into a character attack on Piers Morgan. Yeah, he's a turd. I don't like the guy. Doesn't mean that if I decide that I'm going to go on a show, I'm going to look up a bunch of dirt on him and be ready to pull that out and use that against him when he's pressing me on something that's going on. Why not be able to address that, Candace? And she didn't. Notice she dodged this. I mean, this is a slimy politician move is what just took place there. And it shows you the character that she has. She shows you the type of person that she is. And it's terrible. Like, I would not take this information. I would take no information just based on this. Forget about all the other lies that we know she said, all the other crazy things that she said, the incoherent narratives that she spins up. Just based on this, in this interview alone, I'd be like, I would never listen to that woman because she plays dirty. She doesn't care. She doesn't care about the truth. She cares about her image and her image alone and her ability to manipulate people in front of her. That's what she cares about.
Like I said at the start of this interview, I don't know whether any of the things you're saying are true or not. I just do know you're saying a huge amount of stuff. It's making you very wealthy. You're getting millions and millions of people coming in, which by the way,
what is this idea that's making me very wealthy? Can you actually explain that slowly?
Yes, I'm going to explain it to you slowly because I had a huge run-in, for example.
This is just like a talking point.
No, I'm going to explain exactly what I mean. When Sandy Hook happened and Alex Jones began weaponizing the Sandy Hook tragedy and weaponizing the grief of the poor parents who'd lost their children. And I began to attack him in public. And then eventually there was a court case and it turned out he'd been spewing deliberate lies and that every time he spewed them, they found he made hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in the immediate aftermath of spewing the repeated lies that it was all staged and the families were actors and so on, which he knew to be lies. And he made himself extremely rich and ended up with $1 billion defamation finding against him because he'd been deliberately weaponizing people's grief. And the charge...
Yeah, I'm asking you to explain that.
I'm explaining to you
how was he making money?
I'm explaining to you the analogy, which is there are, as you know, right now, a lot of people, from Tim Pool to the New York Post to others, who've come out very stridently in the last week, and say that's exactly what you've been doing with Erica Kirk.
Yeah, but you haven't answered the question. So this is just made up. It's, as I said, this is just all fluff. You're suggesting that I'm making money. Did I sign a new advertiser? Are we reading more? Are we reading more ads? Do we put this somewhere else? Do we sign
the more
a book
views
deal
you get on YouTube, the more money you make.
Did I sell a T-shirt? Okay, but like, come on now, Piers.
Thanks.
Money on YouTube? Are you kidding me? I was already in a top 10 podcast globally before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And if you think that I would want my friend to be assassinated so I could go from...
No, it's not that she wanted her friend to be assassinated, which wasn't her friend. He had broken all ties with her. What she did was she capitalized on it. It's real simple as that. CJ Correnti, huge supporter of the channel in so many different ways. Thank you, buddy. Wishing you and yours a Merry Christmas. The extreme way to say the left uses the tactic to win, but the right sticks to the rules is kind of, you can vote your way into communism, but you can't vote your way out. And that's the problem, is like we're getting, throughout the last month or so, what I've been watching this, as I've been watching this take place and listening to her more closely, and then just being aghast that people would actually take her seriously at all. It feels like we are in an idiocracy. And the other thing, when you get into these discussions with, trying in good faith to discuss these issues, the many issues that are surrounding Charlie Kirk, when you're trying to talk about this and they say something like, oh, well, they bring up some element, right? And then you address it and you show them proof instead of like, oh, okay. They go, oh yeah, well, what about this? It's just switched to the next, it deflects. And then what it always devolves into is, oh, you're just a Fed asset. You're just paid by Israel. You're paid by TPUSA. I saw you on TPUSA the other day. That proves everything I need to know. That proves everything you need to know. That means that you don't have two gray brain cells between your ears. That's what that means. So I don't know what to tell you.
Being in the top 5 to being number 1, you're out of your mind.
No,
Okay.
I'm telling you,
it's so disrespectful.
I'm telling you.
But like the point is that everyone who is saying that I'm making more money cannot say how I'm making more money because it's just not true. Okay. So you're like, oh, she got a bump in viewership talking about
your
Charlie,
YouTube numbers
everyone in the world because it was a public assassination.
And then it went up
in the weeks following, and it went back to normal.
Candace, are your YouTube numbers up since you've been doing the Charlie Kirk investigations?
What I am saying to you is that this is the exact same argument you guys had about Brigitte. So it can't, and then the same exact same
I think you were lying about Brigitte.
About the Blake Lively thing. Okay, but like, what about the Blake Lively thing? So you can't keep saying that, oh, she's always in the top 10 because she's talking about something. Or this is my podcast and it's me. It's just me. People enjoy my podcast because I don't treat them like they're idiots. I don't treat them like they should accept that Brigitte Macron just can't present one photo of herself raising her kids across 30 years. It's just too much to ask.
Macron,
oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. How dare you? It's such an intrusion of privacy. She'd rather file a transatlantic lawsuit than to just produce photos and put all of this to bed. That's the difference between you and I. So now there's this lie, this repeat lie from Kamala Chronicles, which we did looking into Kamala's background because it was relevant to the election cycle. Then we did the Blake Lively lawsuit, and they said, oh, she's trying to change her brand. That's the only reason her numbers are up. Then we went to Brigitte, which I lost, by the way. I had to get a whole career change when I first covered that story. So joke's on me if I'm doing this to make money, but I was willing to be.
I don't understand how she hasn't passed out yet. She hasn't taken a breath. It's been like 3 minutes of just nonstop diatribe of guttural utterances that it's just nonstop, man.
Fired, to tell the truth, and then it's all about Brigitte, and now we've arrived at Charlie Kirk. I feel like there's something about that actually is just people not being willing to admit that what people appreciate about me and why they keep coming back is that I'm willing to take risks to tell the truth.
No, I think don't get me wrong.
I was already sold out on ads at the end of the year because our podcast was successful. Yeah, I have not sold a t-shirt, nothing with his name on it. It's just me.
Candace, the reason I told the Alex Jones story is he did incredibly well out of Sandy Hook with his investigations. But as was established in the court case against him, brought by the families eventually, and I think we're going to see the same thing with Brigitte Macron.
Not sure what you mean, buddy.
Is that he was weaponizing deliberate lies for money. And I think
Brigitte Macron has a penis. I really want you to know that.
Brigitte Macron does not have a penis.
Brigitte Macron has a penis.
No, she doesn't.
I'm sorry.
She had 3 children.
Did she get it removed?
She had 3 children.
Yeah, you can have adoptive children. You can call somebody, but Brigitte Macron was born a dude named Jean-Michel Trogneau. Well, and I just feel, I want you to know that. I want you to know that Brigitte Macron probably stands peeing up. probably P standing up is what I wanted to know.
The beauty is we have a big bet.
I think Brigitte
we have
stands.
a big bet, and we're going to find out because it's going to court. And you will lose that court case. I think you will.
Yeah. I am not going to lose a court case because Brigitte is presenting evidence that Brigitte was born a woman, because that's never even been offered. That's just their PR coming after and saying these things. Nobody believes that Brigitte Macron is just unable to present any pictures. Nobody's asking for blood.
All right, let's wait for the court case. Let's wait for the court case.
Okay, great.
Now, look,
and you will be proven wrong again unless there's just federal corruption.
Okay, in the fallout from your encounter with Erica Kirk, Nick Fuentes said Candace Owens is done.
I am curious to see if they're going to televise her court case if it comes to fruition. Her court case with the Macrons. I would love to be inside that court. If that comes to, I don't know when that court, if there's a hearing scheduled or anything else with it. Man, if I can get inside that courtroom or if it's televised, we'll definitely cover that. Because I think that's really, I just recently had a discussion with a lawyer. I do want to have someone that's this person that they specialize in defamation. That's what they did. And this person shared with me that she had went through this court case, and she told me the case against Candace is unbelievably strong. What was used in that discussion, the phrase that was used in that discussion, she's a bankrupt person walking. So far, I haven't been able to find. If anybody knows a defamation lawyer that'd be willing to come on to talk about the aspects of that case, I would love to hear that. So, basically the Macrons, before they even filed a cease and desist, they did send a bunch of information and basically proof to Candace before they sent the cease and desist. But she was already in too deep, and she clearly has the inability to go back and correct the record. So she knows, and most importantly, she didn't share that exculpatory information with her viewers either. So I don't know. Curious to see what happens with that.
Out.
What a letdown.
Oh, LOL.
Tim Pool has called you evil. He says you're motivated by the fact you were secretly in love with Charlie Kirk. Is that true?
This is such ridiculous. This is what I mean when I say it's like LOL Fed slop. Oh, did Tim Pool say that I was secretly in love with him? This is it's so, come on, there's no substance to this.
All right. Speaking of no substance, I don't think we're going to get much more substance out of this either. So I'm going to pull this off. Listen, folks, I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I appreciate all the super chats and all the love, support, prayers, all the stuff that you guys do. Comments, nice comments. Please like, subscribe, share this stuff. I did just post. Let me go back over here. I know we never got back to the other episode of Candace, I'm well aware, and I just couldn't do it tonight. This, even with Pierce Morgan able to interject in from time to time, it was still a lot to handle. But I did just post that interview. If you haven't seen it, with Andrew Faraci, that is a really important interview to go watch. It's right up on our channel. Go check that out. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be back on definitely again before Christmas. But yeah, folks, once you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, we have a busy weekend ourselves over here, and appreciate everything you guys do and everything that you guys, also go down in the links down below. If you're not following me on Twitter, Instagram, go do that. Anyways, we've talked enough. I'm tired. Until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you.